Chapter 840. In the depths of the sword cave, his clothes were dyed red with blood, dripping onto the ground. Lin Yuzhen's expression changed and she arrived beside him in a flash. "How are you?" "I'm fine." Ning Chen wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and struggled to get up. He looked at the last 3 murals in front of him and a strange light flashed in his eyes. Sword Pavilion's sword cannon was truly worthy of its reputation. This trip had been worth it. In the distance, at the top of the sword pavilion, in the illusory space, Mei Wuhan felt the changes in the sword cavern, and his face sank. He took a step forward and disappeared. Dark red light converged in front of the sword cave and Mei Wuhan walked out. After several flashes, he arrived at the depths of the sword cave. Inside the sword cave, the peak swordsmen all looked at the flashing figure with strange expressions. Why had the sword pavilion's first pavilion master also come? In the depths of the sword cave, Lin Yuzhen helped Ning Chen up. At this moment, her gaze narrowed as she looked at the 2 figures behind her. A breath later, Mei Wuhan stopped and looked at the 2 figures in front of her. She narrowed her eyes and smiled. "So it's Prince Qi and Prince Ning. How are you? Are you injured?" "Thank you for your concern, First Pavilion Master. I was just shocked." "It's nothing serious," said Ning Chen with a smile. "That's good." Mei Wuhan nodded and said, "Third sister, bring these guests out." "Yes." Jing Wuxia walked over and softly replied. "The 2 of you should go back and rest. I hope to see the 2 of you shine in the sword competition tomorrow." Mei Wuhan smiled as he spoke, and then he didn't say anything further before his figure faded and vanished from the sword cavern. "The 2 of you, please." Jing Wuxia walked over with a gentle expression. Ning Chen and Lin Yuzhen nodded, and then they strode out. Outside the sword cave, the sun was setting in the west. Jing Wuxia brought everyone out and waved her hand to close the sword cave's stone door. She softly said, "Everyone, it's already late. Please go back and rest." Everyone nodded and glanced at the sword cave behind them before walking away. "Let's go too." Ning Chen didn't want to delay any longer due to his injuries. Lin Yuzhen nodded and left with him. In front of the sword cavern, Jing Wuxia looked at the backs of the 2 people as worry flashed across his limpid eyes. The sun set, and the cold moon rose from the east. Night fell on the earth. Looking from afar, the pavilion within the pavilion seemed even more majestic, like a divine sword that would be unsheathed at any time. It made people feel cold all over. In a small courtyard in the distance, a red light rose. Lin Yuzhen's true essence surged, helping the person in front of her heal. After a long time, Ning Chen opened his eyes and suppressed the surging phoenix origin in his body. He said, "Thank you, Your Highness." "What's going on?" Lin Yuzhen withdrew her hand and asked. Ning Chen stood up and looked at the pavilion in the distance. A light flashed in his eyes. He waved his right hand and activated the yellow springs. Layer after layer of strange light rose up, blocking the laws of heaven and earth and blocking the prying gazes from afar. "Your Highness, look carefully. I will show you the sword moves that I have memorized." With a wave of his hand, Taisher appeared. Ning Chen gripped his sword and moved. His red clothes were like a shadow, and his sword was like a graceful swan. The sword manual appeared again. It was hard to tell whether it was real or fake. The amazing sword manual reappeared today. He abandoned his true chi and only kept his sword moves. Each move returned to its essence, returning to its original state. At the side, Lin Yuzhen looked at the sword and became more and more shocked. So, this was the legendary sword manual. When the sword reached the extreme, it could go against the flow and kill immortals. It was rumored that the sword manual could break through the 4th realm. In just half a day, Ning Chen had seen through its mysteries. The 9,900 murals proved the extreme. Ning Chen's figure moved faster and faster. Wind and thunder rumbled on his sword. The heavens descended, and all things were destroyed. He used the final 3 moves as if they were light. The moment the sword tip passed through the gap, the sky split open, and a terrifying crack appeared across the world. Taisha returned to its scabbard and disappeared in an instant. Ning Chen looked at the woman in men's clothes in front of him and said, "Your Highness, did you see it clearly?" Lin Yuzhen recovered from her shock and nodded with a complicated look in her eyes. She sighed and said, "The sword manual that the world's experts can't understand even a little, Brother Ning only used half a day to comprehend it. I admire you. Your Highness is too kind." Ning Chen smiled calmly and said, "High comprehension ability is one of the few advantages I can bring out. Brother Ning's injury just now must be related to this sword manual, right?" Lin Yuzhen said. She and the other experts who entered the sword cave had seen the last 3 murals, but they were safe and sound. Only Brother Ning had an accident after seeing it. There must be something strange about it. Yes. Ning Chen nodded and said, "I didn't understand the first 9,000 murals at first. I just memorized them by force. When I saw the last 3 murals, the moves I memorized before were verified one by one. Only then did I understand a little. However, because my mind was exhausted, the true qi in my body backfired and I was injured. No wonder so many top sword experts from the major star fields couldn't understand this sword manual. There is almost no one else in the world who can memorize all 9,900 murals like Brother Ning." Lin Yuzhen sighed with emotion. Fate was fair after all. Brother Ning's aptitude was indeed not much, but his wisdom and comprehension were really terrifying. It was hard to believe. Just as the two of them were talking, Mei Wuhan stood quietly on the highest floor of the pavilion in the distance. She looked at the void sealed by the restriction in the distance, and her eyes flashed. The commotion in the sword cave before this was undoubtedly because someone had comprehended the sword manual. The 9th son of Mo's sect was the closest to the last 3 murals at that time. It was most likely him. She didn't pay too much attention to the various rumors about this kid earlier. Even though this person had schemed against the various Doqi practitioners in the ancient battlefield, it was truly not worth mentioning in her opinion. She could kill all those people with a wave of her hand. However, the incident that occurred in the sword cave today caused her to have no choice but to pay attention to this kid. At the same time, in the Water Moon Hall, the second pavilion master of the sword pavilion stood in front of the window. She was also looking at the inconspicuous small courtyard in the distance. Her beautiful face was still cold, and there was no emotion in it. Second sister. Jing Wuxia walked over, looked at the woman in front of the window, and called out softly. "What's the matter?" Wu Shui did not turn around. "Second sister, can you stop fighting for the Phoenix Cry sword? After all, this sword is no longer inferior to our sword pavilion," Jing Wuxia advised. "Third sister, did you come here to talk about this? You can go back now," Wu Shui said indifferently. Jing Wuxia sighed softly. She knew that talking about this matter would not change the former's mind. She changed the topic and said, "Second sister, you should know about what happened in the sword cave today, right?" "Yes." Wu Shui replied indifferently. "Second sister, don't you have anything to ask?" Jing Wuxia asked softly. "What is there to ask?" Wu Shui turned around and looked at the person in front of her. She said, "The sword manual cannot be leaked. This is the rule. I don't think I need to tell you what will happen to the person who comprehended the sword manual. Third sister, do you think a person who is about to die is worth my concern?" Jing Wuxia was silent. After a moment, she softly said, "Second sister, the person who comprehended the sword manual was the 9th son of Mahist sect. This person is on good terms with Prince Qi. Moreover, the swordsman who came today clearly has a relationship with this person. These 3 are true experts of the human world. Our sword pavilion cannot easily provoke them. Third sister, since when have you been so concerned about sword pavilion?" Wu Shui coldly said. She turned around again and looked at the cold night outside the window. She said indifferently, "Third sister, listen to second sister's advice. There are some things that cannot be changed just because you want to. Sword Pavilion has been passed down for tens of thousands of years. Ruthlessness has long been ingrained in our bones. How can it be changed by you alone? Leave. Second sister is tired and needs to rest." When Jing Wuxia heard this, she sighed once more. She did not say anything else. She gracefully bowed and left. Under the cold moon, a black-robed swordsman walked towards a small courtyard. His cold face had not changed at all compared to 100 years ago. He was calm and indifferent. "Senior venerated sword." Ning Chen respectfully bowed in front of the small courtyard. "You still haven't entered the immortal treading realm?" Mu Chang'e walked into the small courtyard and directly asked without beating around the bush. Ning Chen gently shook his head. "No. I knew that this step would be very difficult for you. I didn't expect that you would still be unable to succeed at this stage." Mu Chang'e softly sighed and continued, "Take out your sword." Ning Chen was startled, but he soon came back to his senses. He waved his right hand, and with a burst of azure light, Genesis Supreme appeared and fell into his hand. The Heavenly Sanctum sword art has a total of 10 moves. Sword 1 to Sword 10 were passed down orally by the Heavenly Sanctum sword sovereigns. You have already seen them. After Sword 10, there are no fixed moves. You can only rely on your own comprehension. As he spoke, the Heavenly Tower appeared in Mu Chang'e's hand. A surge of sword will rose. The stupa began, and the fairy slaying ended. The first sword to the 10th sword evolved in the illusion. When the 10th sword ended, there were no more sword moves. The sword chi filled the sky, and the 11th sword suddenly appeared. The perfect sword was endless, without beginning or end. It crisscrossed and drowned the entire world. Sword 11 was comprehended in my battle with Alcade King. It is to use one's cultivation to activate sword chi. After perfectly fusing them, one can reach the peak of human strength. However, at this point, Mu Chang'e's tone changed, and the sword chi that filled the sky changed as well, rapidly converging from all directions. In my battle with the legendary swordsman of the Divine Lands, Sword 11 was defeated for the first time. Therefore, I went into seclusion to comprehend a higher level of sword technique. As she finished speaking, the sword chi that filled the sky returned, becoming formless. A bright sword radiance spiraled up, so dazzling. Where the sword reached, there was no end. There was only a sword intent that surpassed the peak. Sword 12 appeared, and wherever the sword pressed down, heaven and earth disintegrated. The terrifying sword intent filled the air, without beginning or end. It was endless. Not far away, Ning Chen looked at the spiraling sword intent in front of him, and his expression became unusually serious. In the next moment, the sword intent dissipated, and the divine sword returned to its scabbard. Mu Chang'e waved her hand and kept Heavenly Tower. Without another word, she turned and left. Junior Ning Chen thanks Senior Heavenly Sword Sovereign. Behind her, Ning Chen bowed respectfully. He would never dare to forget the favor of teaching him. He would engrave it in his heart. In the night, the Heavenly Sword Sovereign's figure disappeared into the distance. After a few breaths, he disappeared. Ning Chen straightened his body and looked ahead. A tinge of emotion flashed across his eyes. People like Mu Bai, the legend of the Xia dynasty, and the Heavenly Sword Sovereign were true swordsmen. They were obsessed with the sword their entire lives. Compared to them, his sword was no longer pure. Chapter 841. It was a cold night in a small courtyard. Hong Yi wielded his sword, from the first sword to the 10th sword, and then to the 11th sword. The crisscrossing sword energy permeated the entire forbidden underworld. Outside the forbidden underworld, the sun rose from the east. The second round of the Wuji sword banquet was about to begin. The swordsmen would compete with each other to determine their swordsmanship. In a pavilion within a pavilion, swordsmen from various domains arrived and took their seats. In a small courtyard far away, Lin Yuzhen stood outside the forbidden underworld, quietly waiting for the former to come out. As the first rays of the morning sun shone, the forbidden underworld dissipated. Hong Yi walked out, his sword energy converged and disappeared without a trace. "Your Highness, let's go," Ning Qin said and walked out of the courtyard. Lin Yuzhen nodded and followed him. In a pavilion within a pavilion, the top 20 swordsmen had all gathered. The atmosphere became unusually quiet as the sword competition began. On the main seats, the 3 pavilion masters of the sword pavilion had arrived. The 3 of them each had their own merits and were undoubtedly the focus of everyone present. I'm sure everyone knows the rules of this round. Be it sword manuals or sword insights, you can take them all out. The top 10 can enter the sword domain of my sword pavilion to cultivate for half a day and advance to the final round, Mei Wuhan said with a smile. Sword domain. Everyone looked at each other. It was the first time they had heard of this place. Mei Wuhan looked at the crowd in front of him and explained with a smile, the sword domain is the place where the pavilion masters of the sword pavilion comprehended their swordsmanship. There will be a large amount of sword precepts left inside, which should be helpful to everyone. Hearing the former's words, the swordsmen from various galaxies were shocked. Rumor had it that the sword pavilion had once produced a swordsman of the 4th realm. Didn't that mean that the sword domain also contained the insights of the swordsman of the 4th realm? This was more precious than the swordsmanship manual. Looking at the expressions of the people in front of him, Mei Wuhan smiled with satisfaction and said, "Everyone, time is up. Let's start with the first place of the previous round, His Highness Prince Qi." As the pavilion master spoke, the crowd quieted down. Lin Yuzhen's eyes flashed. She stood up and flipped her hand. Half of the sword manual appeared and slowly flew into the air. The royal family of Beiqi's unique skill, the wind and rain sword of landscape. This half of the manual is the general outline of the sword technique. As he spoke, the sword manual was unfolded. Strange light flourished, and words and diagrams appeared one after another, reflected in everyone's eyes. The swordsman, the monarch of 100 weapons, the wind and dust 3 feet sword, the nation's military uniform, obtained my wind and rain sword, the nation in my heart, did not disappoint. In front of the sword manual, there was a general outline of the sword. It was the supreme sword art left behind by the first emperor of Beiqi. Today, it appeared in front of everyone. The emperor's magnanimity and knowledge were shocking. Heaven-grade sword art. The emperor's sword was majestic and boundless. Without a doubt, it was the peak cultivation method of the present age. Mei Wuhan opened his mouth and set the grade of the sword manual. Below, the crowd nodded without any objections. Lin Yuzhen waved her hand, put away the sword manual, and sat back down. Under his seat, Mu Chang'e stood up on his own. As he walked, his sword intent soared. 10 steps forward, the 10 styles of the heavenly abode appeared. Sword of Superior. Mei Wuhan commented. She could tell that Qin Wentian was still holding back. However, with these 10 stances, it was sufficient for him to advance to the final round. On the right side of the main seat, Shui Wuyue sat there quietly. His eyes were cold and emotionless. Next, it's our sword pavilion's turn. The cultivation methods of the sword pavilion's pavilion masters are all sword manuals. Everyone has seen it yesterday. What is the grade? Everyone, please comment, Mei Wuhan said with a smile. During the banquet, the swordsmen stared. It was indeed difficult to judge. They couldn't understand the sword manual yesterday. However, the sword pavilion's pavilion masters had reached the 4th realm, which meant that this sword manual was definitely an incredible cultivation method. Heaven-grade sword art, sword god Baiyu from the Sky Mist Star Zone, who sat at the head of the table, said calmly. I agree. The woman in red from the Zhurong family also expressed her opinion. I agree. I agree. Everyone responded and determined the grade of the sword manual. Ning Chen quietly drank the wine in his cup. After a while, he stood up and stepped forward. Everyone focused their attention, waiting for the former's brilliance. The next moment, a shocking scene occurred. Brilliance rose around the body of the red figure. In 10 steps, the Buddha was the beginning and the fairy slaying was the end. It was the reappearance of the heavenly abode sword art. Sitting down, the swordsmen looked at each other, unable to hide the shock in their eyes. On the head of the table, Mei Wuhan frowned slightly. 2 people, the same sword manual. This was the first time such a situation had occurred. Since it's exactly the same, there's no need to think too much. Next to him, Shui Wuyue said indifferently. Below, everyone nodded. This was indeed the only way. Sitting at the banquet, Mu Chang'e nodded without leaving a trace. To be able to comprehend the heavenly abode sword art to this extent in one night, this boy's comprehension was really terrifying. In front of the banquet, Ning Chen walked back to his original position and sat down again. He calmly picked up his wine cup and continued to watch. Next to him, Lin Yuzhen's face flashed with a touch of helplessness. This brother Ning was really calm. He didn't care about what others thought. Sword God Baiyu stood up from the head of the table. This time, he didn't take out the sword manual. With a wave of his right hand, a scabbard appeared. The scabbard was black, and sword marks crisscrossed. This is my sword technique. The sword must have the elegance of unsheathing it, but it must also have the boldness of sheathing it, said Sword God Baiyu. On the scabbard, sword marks crisscrossed. Unsheathing and sheathing the sword were 2 simple moves, but they had been tempered millions of times before finally becoming one. Below, everyone quieted down. This sword God Baiyu had once again given everyone a big problem. This sword was difficult to judge. Heaven-grade sword. Ning Chen spoke calmly for the first time during the banquet. Hearing this, everyone frowned. Heaven-grade? Was it too much? Heaven-grade sword. Not far from them, Mu Chang'e also spoke indifferently. After the 2 of them spoke, the swordsmen's expressions became serious. They carefully considered this. Sword God Baiyu's gaze swept over the 2 of them. He no longer looked down on them. These 2 people's sword techniques had already been evaluated to be high grade. For them to evaluate his sword as heaven grade meant that he was ranked above them. There were only 10 people in total who could advance to the final round. A difference of 1 rank could be the difference between heaven and earth. Putting everything else aside, these 2 people's magnanimity was worthy of his respect. The sword was a killing weapon, but it was also the weapon of a gentleman. Only a straightforward and upright person could attain the highest level of the sword. In the silent banquet, no one spoke again. Lin Yuzhen glanced at the person beside her. After a moment of silence, she spoke, I agree. Heaven-grade sword. Her attainments in the sword were inferior to his, but she believed in his judgment. When the 3rd person spoke out, the swordsmen's hearts were once again stirred. They struggled even more. Heaven-grade. On the main seat, Shui Wuyue coldly said 2 words and didn't say anything else. When Sword Pavilion's 2nd pavilion masters spoke out, everyone sighed inwardly. They no longer hesitated and gently nodded in agreement. At the beginning of the sword competition, there were already 3 heaven-grade swordsmen. 2 of them were high-grade swordsmen. Sitting at the banquet, the pressure on everyone increased. Only the top 10 were chosen. These 5 people were basically guaranteed to advance. This meant that their chances weren't high. During the banquet, the red-clothed girl walked out with the Zhurong family's sword manual. Once again, she took the title of high-grade sword. Next, one after another, powerful swordsmen participated in the sword conference with their sword skills or sword comprehension. Half a day passed quickly, and the sword conference gradually came to an end. Third sister, you announce the results. On the main seat, Mei Wuhan spoke with a smile. Jing Wuxia nodded. He stood up and looked at everyone with a gentle expression. It's hard to determine the top 3, so they're tied at the top. The top 3 are Prince Qi's Wind and Rain Sword Technique, Sword Pavilion's Sword Manual, and Sword God Baiyu's Sword Technique. After he finished speaking, Jing Wuxia shifted his gaze to the red-robed young man and said, the 4th and 5th contestants are from the same sect. Everyone should have guessed that they are the Tian Fu swordplay of Mr. Ning and the Tian Fu Swordmaster. The 6th is Miss Zhurong's Skyfire Sword Technique. The 7th is... One name after another was announced. The competition for the top 10 was very intense. Those whose names were mentioned heaved a sigh of relief, while the others sighed with regret. After announcing the rankings, a gentle smile appeared on Jing Wuxia's face that was covered by a veil. She said, everyone, tomorrow will be the final battle of swords. The champion of the endless sword banquet will be decided. I hope everyone can come and witness it. Definitely. Below, everyone suppressed their emotions. They didn't want to lose their composure and nodded in agreement. After the sword competition ended, everyone didn't want to stay any longer. They stood up and bowed before leaving the banquet. On the main seat, Mei Wuhan stood up and left. Jing Wuxia looked at the purple-clothed girl hesitantly. In the end, he couldn't help but say, second sister, I hope you can seriously consider what I said yesterday. Hearing this, Wu Yueshui's expression was still as cold as ice. He didn't respond. Jing Wuxia sighed and could only stand up and leave. After Mei Wuhan and Jing Wuxia left, Wu Yueshui stood up and looked at the 9 people below. He said indifferently, follow me. After saying that, Wu Yueshui didn't say another word. He turned and walked toward the back of the hall. Behind the hall, at the end of the 9 winding corridors, a staircase to the heavens appeared. It soared into the clouds, and the end couldn't be seen. Go up. You have half a day. You should know the rules. When the sun sets, you must come out. Wu Yueshui stopped and indifferently said. The 9 people responded in unison. Then, their silhouettes flashed as they rushed up the heavenly ladder. Above the pavilion within the pavilion was an illusory space with chaos surging. It was a strange and vast spacetime. The 9 of them had just entered when they felt the laws of the surroundings change. Heavy sword pressure assaulted them from all directions, causing them to feel suffocated. Be careful. Mu Chang'e looked at the youth beside him and warned him before walking forward. Not far away, the others also split up and walked in different directions. Your Highness, we should also split up. Otherwise, when we cultivate, our laws will clash and affect each other, said Ning Chen to Prince Qi. Be careful. Lin Yuzhen hesitated for a moment before nodding her head and exhorting. Don't worry, I'll be fine. Ning Chen smiled faintly and replied softly. There wasn't much time left, so the 2 of them didn't say anything more. They each chose a different direction and left. A moment later, the entrance to the sword domain closed. Boundless laws surged out, filling every corner. Chapter 842. In the Chaos Sword realm above the 9 winding corridors, the 9 mighty ones on the swords split up and headed deeper into the sword realm. The gate to the sword domain closed and boundless sword laws surged. An abnormally powerful pressure surged from all directions, making it increasingly difficult for the 9 of them to move forward. In the northwest direction, Lin Yuzhen was moving forward alone. She released her aura and became one with the heavens, comprehending the supreme will of the sword that was left in the sword domain. Suddenly, in the void ahead, sword light converged, and a beautiful figure in a purple dress appeared. An abnormally powerful sword pressure circulated, and even the sword domain laws were shaken away. Second Pavilion Master. Lin Yuzhen narrowed her eyes and said slowly. Wu Yueshui walked out of the void and looked at Prince Qi, who was dressed as a man. With a wave of his right hand, an ancient sword that had been hidden in its scabbard appeared. Lin Yuzhen's vital energy surged and blocked the sword Qi. Her expression turned cold as she asked, second pavilion master, what is the meaning of this? If you win, you can leave safely. If you lose, the phoenix cry will return. Wu Yue said coldly, and the sunset divine sword was unsheathed. In an instant, the ice and snow melted at the peak of the 9 heavens, and the sun shone brightly. With danger looming over her, Lin Yuzhen no longer retreated. She clenched her left hand, and the phoenix cry was unsheathed. A strange light flourished, and the phoenix cry reached the 9 heavens. The two divine weapons collided with each other. With a loud clang, the shockwaves shook. Layer after layer of the void collapsed, and all things were alarmed. Wu Yue's expression was ice-cold, but his moves were abnormally intense. The brilliance of the sunset sword was dazzling, and the terrifying temperature could burn the sky and boil the sea, making it unbearable. As for Lin Yuzhen, she held the cry of a phoenix in her hand and faced the battle head-on. Thunder surged around her body, and the demeanor of a king was clearly displayed. They were both at the pinnacle of the human world. Although she was a woman, her elegance was no less than that of a man. Her sword shocked the heavens and sank the earth. As the second pavilion master of Sword Pavilion, he actually used force to rob. Is this the way of Sword Pavilion? Lin Yuzhen's true essence rose unceasingly. Her fine black hair fluttered in the wind. The martial essence on top of her head soared. The winner takes all. This has been the case since ancient times. Sword Pavilion is no exception. Wu Yue replied. The divine sun on the sunset sword rose, and the burning heavenly light descended. The 8 wastelands sank, and the surrounding heaven and earth turned into a sea of fire. The extreme essences on the swords collided, creating a terrifying scene as if the heavens were collapsing and the earth was caving in. The shockwaves rippled outwards. The two individuals both took half a step back, evenly matched. The wind and rain of the mountains and rivers will last for 100 generations. Knowing how strong her opponent was, Lin Yuzhen didn't want to fight for a long time. She used the wind and rain sword technique. Vast origin energy spread out and a strange phenomenon appeared. The picturesque mountains and rivers didn't disappoint. The heaven-grade sword technique appeared. Moonless water, divine condensation. The divine sun brilliance on the sword changed from white to ink. Day and night were reversed. It was a godly technique. The moves of the sword scripture fused with the sunset divine sword. The might of the ultimate martial skill could destroy the heavens and the earth, appearing in the world for the first time. Moon heavenly sun. With the sun and moon in one body, the setting sun slashed down. The mountains and rivers were destroyed in an instant, and the hope became nothing. A pool of blood splashed onto the sword domain. Lin Yuzhen took several steps back and was injured for the first time. The shockwaves swept out. Receiving the shockwaves, Shui Wuyue's feet swayed and his breathing became unstable. With a difference of half a move, the outcome of the battle was tipped. The sword codex of the sword garret and the secret art of the Beiki royal family were determined in a single move. Most of the moves of the wind and rain sword of the first emperor of Beiki originated from the sword garret's sword art. How can you defeat me with this technique? Moonless water said coldly. His figure swept out, and the setting sun reflected on 1,000 rivers. His sword split open the world. The divine swords clashed, and a glaring cold star appeared. Her technique was defeated. Lin Yuzhen, who was injured, showed signs of weakness. Her every move lost its sharpness. Phoenix dance in the 9 heavens. Her moves were restrained. Lin Yuzhen changed her sword style. She abandoned the secret art of Beiki and used the phoenix dance on her sword. Oh! With a soft sound of surprise, Moonless Water's cold eyes flashed with surprise. She could react so quickly. The name of Prince Qi was indeed well-deserved. The battle resumed with endless sharpness. The battle was white-hot. The setting sun shone on the sea of fire, and the phoenix danced under the heavens. Slash! The blade of the sword cut through her clothes, and blood splattered. The two swords clashed. Lin Yuzhen, who was injured, could not concentrate her energy and was injured again. Lin Yuzhen lost one move, and then another. When Lin Yuzhen's vital energy was exhausted, Moonless Water's sword became fiercer and more ruthless. You've gone too far. With her injuries worsening, Lin Yuzhen's face flashed with anger. She shouted, and her vital energy rushed to the sky. The crown on her head shattered, and her long hair danced wildly. Lin Yuzhen's face changed in an instant. Her handsomeness was slightly reduced, and she became more beautiful. Lin Yuzhen took a step forward, and the phoenix cry condensed, splitting the sky and the sea. With a loud bang, the setting sun met her. The two swords clashed, and the chaos dispersed. The battle was split into two. The dripping red blood was so dazzling. Moonless Water's right hand that was holding the sword dripped with blood. It was the first time he was injured since the battle. While the two were fighting, Mei Wuhan stood quietly in the illusory space at the highest level of the pavilion. In front of him, a sky curtain appeared, showing the battle of the Chaos Sword Realm. Second sister, don't let me down. After a long time, Mei Wuhan spoke with an indifferent expression. At this moment, in the Water Moon Hall not far away, Jing Wuxia, who had something to attend to, stepped in. When he realized that Moonless Water was not in the hall, his face changed. Second sister. Jing Wuxia's figure flashed. He flew out of the Water Moon Hall and rushed toward the 9 winding corridors in the distance. After a few breaths, Jing Wuxia appeared above the 9 winding corridors in the Chaos Sword Realm. He looked at the closed door of the Sword Realm, and his face, which was covered by a veil, changed several times. The Chaos Sword Realm was in a frenzy. Prince Qi and Moonless Water's battle was becoming more and more intense. Blood splattered from time to time, adding to the slaughter. The two of them had unleashed their full power, and every move they made had the power to destroy the world. Even though the Sword Realm was suppressed by the laws, it still showed signs of instability. Huh! All the experts in the Sword Realm sensed something, and they looked toward the northwest. Their expressions changed. Not good. In the distance, Ning Chen's expression froze. He stepped forward and transformed into a phoenix, flying toward the battle. At the same time, outside the Sword Realm, Jing Wuhan wanted to reopen the Sword Realm. Suddenly, a deep red sword light pierced through the sky, blocking his path. Big sister. Seeing the divine sword blocking his path, Jing Wuhan's expression changed once more. He turned to look at the highest floor of the pavilion, shock in his eyes. This battle had affected many sides. In the center of the battle, Moonless Water sensed that someone was coming from the distance. His eyes turned cold, and the sunset sword shone with dazzling light. Lin Yuzhen did not dodge. She faced it head-on, returning to her female form. She unleashed all her energy, and her moves were filled with divine might. Rumbling sounds echoed throughout the Sword Realm. Swordsmen, kings, and only one at the peak. They were all dyed in a blinding vermilion. In the distance, the red light flew faster and faster. The laws of the Sword Realm sensed something and condensed into a massive dragon gate. It was as heavy as a mountain, and it pressed down on the phoenix. 10 breaths later, the red-clothed figure arrived. Genesis Supreme unsheathed his sword and shook the sunset sword. With a heaven-shaking boom, the heavens and earth split apart. Moonless Water stabilized himself and looked at the red-clothed figure in front of him, his expression turning even colder. A moment later, the dragon gate pressed down, suppressing the phoenix that had once defied the heavens. Chapter 843. In the primal chaos sword domain, 2 strong cultivators were fighting. Hong Yi appeared and stopped the battle with a single sword strike. Knowing destiny made a move. Heaven and earth sensed it, and the dragon gate appeared and pressed down. Ning Chen's body moved. He rushed up to the 9 heavens and swung his sword to block the dragon gate that was descending from the sky. With a rumble, heaven and earth shook. Above the dragon gate, the symbol civilization was destroyed. A moment later, it returned to normal and continued to suppress. When Lin Yuzhen saw this, she ignored her injuries and took a step forward. She stood in the air and waved her phoenix cry to help Lin Yuzhen resist the might of the dragon gate. Blood splattered and dyed her hair red. Lin Yuzhen, who was already injured, suffered a backlash from the dragon's gate's laws. She staggered and nearly fell. Not too far away, Shui Wuyue frowned. His figure flickered as he appeared in the air, carrying the heavily injured Prince Qi with him. Others are not allowed to interfere with the dragon's gate's calamity. If you don't want to be suppressed, then don't seek your own death. Wuyue Shui warned coldly. He looked away and didn't say anything else. Above the 9 heavens, thunder rumbled and lightning flashed. The dragon gate descended into the world. An incomparably majestic pressure swept up the wind and clouds, suppressing the 9 heavens and 10 earths. Below, Ning Chen's phoenix essence soared to the extreme. His sword split open the 9 heavens as he resisted the dragon's gate tribulation. The rules of the dragon's gate fell one after another, binding the knowing destiny body. Those who defied the natural order were not tolerated by the way of heaven. Demon body. With an angry shout, Ning Chen's demonic aura surged. A moment later, a black-clothed figure appeared. Scarlet's sword was in his hand, and the demon cultivator's demon sword was extremely ferocious. Joining hands, he once again resisted the heavenly Tao. The phoenix fire demonic energy surged like waves. The Taoist and demon dual swords defied the heavens. Boom! The battle between the celestials and the celestials raged. The fallen dragon's gate sank rapidly, continuously devouring the phoenix demon's energy. Een Moon Heavenly Sun. At this moment, the phoenix and demon bodies danced on the sword. A black moon and a white sun appeared and merged into one. It was actually a move from the sword canon. In the sword domain, the precepts on the swords left by generations of sword pavilion masters vibrated and gathered rapidly from all directions, echoing the moves of the sword codex. 3,000 meters away, Shui Wuyue's pupils shrank. His icy expression finally changed. How could this be? Didn't he only stay in the sword cavern for half a day? He's actually able to use the moves of the sword scriptures. Above the void, the ultimate move of the swordsmanship codex appeared. The sword domain was shaken. Endless precepts gathered, aiding the knowing destiny state. The black moon and the white sun condensed on the dual swords. One sword went against the sky, resisting the heavenly punishment. The sword slashed the dragon gate, and an intense collision resounded through the 9 heavens. The shockwaves from the collision caused both of them to suffer heavy injuries. Blood dyed the sky. At the same time, cracks appeared on the fallen dragon gate, crisscrossing and spreading across half of the dragon gate. In the blink of an eye, with a loud bang, 30% of the dragon gate shattered. The power of laws dissipated, and the pressure decreased. In the next moment, the dragon gate rumbled and gradually merged into heaven and earth, disappearing from sight. In the void, the demonic cultivator, whose body had been greatly exhausted, dissipated and merged back into the phoenix body. As Ning Chen's figure landed on the ground, he staggered and vomited a mouthful of blood, barely managing to stabilize himself. 1,000 feet away, Lin Yuzhen's figure flashed. She took a step forward and supported him. She asked with concern, "How are you?" "It's fine." Ning Chen stretched out his hand and wiped away the blood at the corner of his mouth. He looked a little tired as he said, "After destroying 30% of the dragon gate, I can use more of my cultivation body. This is a good thing. Aren't you being too optimistic?" As he spoke, not far away, Shui Wuyue walked over and said coldly, "The dragon gate is formed by the laws of heaven and earth. It will gradually recover. Perhaps the next time it appears, it will be completely restored." Seeing the newcomer, Lin Yuzhen's eyes narrowed. She stood in front of him and said coldly, "Second Pavilion Master, do you still want to fight?" Shui Wuyue looked in the direction of the sword domain's gate. After a while, he shook his head and said, "No, I can take back the Phoenix Cry sword anytime. It doesn't have to be today." Speaking up to this point, Shui Wuyue looked over at the red-clothed young man in front of him and said indifferently, "Ninth son of Mo sect, I didn't expect you to have comprehended the sword canon to this extent in just half a day. However, this is a disaster for you, not a blessing." At this point, Shui Wuyue did not say anything else and turned to leave. Ning Chen frowned and looked at the former's back view. A dignified look flashed in his eyes. "Brother Ning, did you notice that this second pavilion master seems to be hiding something?" Lin Yuzhen said softly, "Just now, I was attacked by the Dragon Gate." She could have taken the opportunity to snatch the sword, but she did not do so. Instead, she took me away. It's difficult to know a person's heart from their face. Ning Chen replied, "People who seem kind sometimes are the most scheming. And people who seem ruthless sometimes are the most emotional. There are too many things that are hard to understand in this sword pavilion. We don't need to know so much. We just need to be careful and be on guard against dangers that may appear at any time." Lin Yuzhen nodded and said, "Brother Ning is right." Outside the sword domain's gate, the divine sword was blocking the way. Jing Wuxia did not dare to barge in and could only wait anxiously. At this moment, a rumbling sound could be heard. The gate of the sword domain opened and a beautiful figure in a purple dress walked out. She looked at the person in front of the gate and said indifferently, "Let's go back." "Second sister." Jing Wuxia walked forward and said worriedly, "Did you do anything?" "What?" Shui Wuyue stopped and looked at Jing Wuxia. He said calmly, "You're not worried about second sister's safety. Instead, you're more worried about those outsiders?" "Of course not." Jing Wuxia shook his head and said, "I know second sister's strength very well. They can't hurt second sister." "Not necessarily." Shui Wuyue replied and continued to walk forward. He said, "There are at least 3 people inside who can pose a threat to me, including the 2 people you're worried about. Alright, don't ask about things you shouldn't ask. Come back with me." Jing Wuxia nodded worriedly and followed. In the sword domain, after an earth-shattering battle, the world shook for a long time. Outside the sword domain, the blazing sun moved westward. Half a day gradually passed. In front of the Water Moon Hall, Shui Wuyue waved his hand. Within the sword domain, the wind and clouds swirled and the power of the laws changed. The gate opened and sent everyone out one by one. Everyone rushed down the 9 winding corridors. Mu Chang'e walked forward and looked at the injured Ning Chen. He frowned and asked, "How are you?" "It's nothing serious." Ning Chen replied with a smile on his face. Mu Chang'e nodded and warned, "Be careful. I saw your dragon gate just now. If it doesn't work this time, there will be a next time. If it doesn't work the next time, there will be a next time. There will be a day when you will completely destroy it." "Understood." Ning Chen nodded and said, "Senior Honorable Sword, don't worry. After this, I have more or less gained some experience. The next time I attack, I won't be in such a sorry state like today. I don't have to worry about your words." Mu Chang'e replied and walked forward. He transmitted his voice, "Prepare for tomorrow's sword match. Be careful of the first pavilion master. She gives me the feeling that she is the most dangerous person in the sword pavilion." "Okay." Ning Chen replied, "I will be careful." Mu Chang'e walked away. Lin Yuzhen looked at his back and said, "Brother Ning, how confident are you in tomorrow's match?" "First seat." Ning Chen's eyes narrowed slightly. "It depends on the rules. I have a 50% chance of winning. Life or death, I have a 100% chance." Chapter 844. In the starry sky, a majestic sword pavilion stood on a floating continent. Its inheritance had been passed down for tens of thousands of years. The sun rose in the sword pavilion. The final round of the everlasting sword banquet was about to begin. The top 10 would compete with their swords to become the champion. The top 10 had arrived, and everyone was bearing witness to it. One by one, the experts arrived and took their seats. Sword Pavilion's 3 pavilion masters appeared and sat down in front of the main seat. Thank you all for coming to witness the final battle for the champion of the everlasting sword banquet. Mei Wuhan looked at the crowd and smiled. The rules this time are very simple. We will draw lots to determine the order of the battles, and the competition will stop at a certain point. We can't harm each other. Ning Qin sighed. Comparing swords and moves really couldn't be considered his strong point. His sword was more suitable for killing people. Come. Mei Wuhan said. As soon as he finished speaking, a sword attendant walked forward. There were 10 jade slips on a wooden tray in his hand, and each of them had 10 different numbers carved on them. To be fair, second sister, you'll be the last to draw. Mei Wuhan looked at the purple-clothed woman beside him and smiled. Wu Yue Shui nodded. There was no change in her ice-cold expression. Everyone, there are 10 different numbers engraved on the jade slips. Those who draw adjacent numbers, such as first and second, third and fourth, will fight separately, explained Mei Wuhan. The 9 people nodded and sat down. Sword God Baiyu raised his hand and took a jade slip. Next, the Zhurong family's woman in red, Lin Yuzhen, and the others also drew jade slips in order to determine the order of the first round. 10. Ning Chen looked at the numbers on the jade slip and narrowed his eyes. It seemed this was the last group. The number didn't mean anything to him. If he wanted to become the champion of the everlasting sword banquet, he had to defeat all his opponents. Friends who drew numbers 1 and 2, please come, said Mei Wuhan with a smile. As he spoke, Moonless Shui stood up from his seat on the right and walked down the stage. Everyone was startled, but they soon recovered and revealed strange expressions. Sword Pavilion's second pavilion master had actually come out in the first round. During the banquet, among the 9 people, a man in blue clothes sighed softly and stood up to attend. Are you ready? I'm about to begin. Wu Yue Shui reminded him. She waved her hand and the sunset glow appeared. The divine sun rose and the divine sword floated in it. The sword was not out of its scabbard, but the sword pressure swept out in all directions. The blue-robed man focused. He clenched his right hand, and a dark blue divine weapon appeared. The sword was unsheathed, and it froze the world. What a pity. On the main seat, Mei Wuhan sighed with emotion. The result was already decided. Before he finished speaking, Shui Wuyue gripped his sword and unsheathed it. In an instant, sunset glow was unsheathed. The divine sun illuminated the world, melting ice and snow. In that instant, snowflakes and flowers of blood blossomed in the world. The sunset returned to its scabbard. The battle was over. With a muffled groan, blood dyed the air. The blue-robed man knelt down. A sword pierced through his chest, and blood splashed out. Wu Yue water wins. Mei Wuhan spoke, announcing the result. He glanced at the heavily injured blue-robed young man below as a bright light flashed in his eyes. Initially, he could have gone even further, but sadly, he encountered his second sister. Cultivation techniques and the attributes of divine weapons countered each other. This person had no chance of winning at all, defeating his opponent in a single move. Everyone was shocked. When they recovered from their shock, disbelief filled their faces. To be able to pass the Sword Pavilion's 2 trials and advance to the final round, none of them were simple. They never imagined that they would be defeated in a single move by the Sword Pavilion's second pavilion master. Men, bring Reverend Yu away to treat his injuries, ordered Mei Wuhan. Yes. 2 sword attendants walked out and respectfully accepted the order. They immediately went forward to support the heavily injured blue-robed man and left the hall together. "Brother Ning, it's my turn," Lin Yuzhen softly said. She stood up and walked to the front of the table. Not far away, a swordsman from the All-Heavens Starfield also walked out. His powerful aura was faintly discernible. His cultivation was at the late stage of the true realm. "I am Lin Yuzhen. Please." "Sang Huai," the swordsman responded. After bowing, he waved his hand and a sword appeared in his hand. Lin Yuzhen raised her hand, and a phoenix cry flew out. With a clang, it blocked the incoming attack. The two swords clashed, and cold stars filled the eyes. In the banquet, the sword experts all understood what was going on. The outcome of this battle would not be decided too quickly. However, it was clear who was stronger and who was weaker. Queen Qi, Lin Yuzhen, was a famous expert in the starry sky. Under the 4th level of cultivation, she rarely met a match. Although this swordsman called Sang Huai was powerful, it would still be difficult for him to shake the title of Queen Qi. In the blink of an eye, the battle had already gone over 10 moves. Sword light dazzled the eyes. The battle of the peak of the sword was pleasing to the eyes. Amen. Suddenly, Lin Yuzhen, who originally held a slight advantage, forcibly condensed her body. She gave up on her conservative strategy and unleashed all of her power, wanting to end the battle quickly. Seeing this, Sang Huai's eyes shone brightly. He saw a trace of an opportunity to turn the situation around. He also unleashed his cultivation. His sword split apart, and divine light illuminated the world. The two swords clashed, and with a loud explosion, the two separated. They both took several steps back, their bodies dyed with blood. Sang Huai knelt on the ground with his sword propped against the ground. Blood continuously flowed from his mouth. He had lost by half a move. Ugh! On the other side, a sword wound appeared on Lin Yuzhen's left shoulder. Blood spurted out. She staggered and was heavily injured again. It was an expected result and an unexpected process. After they sat down, the experts from the various starfields revealed puzzled expressions. They did not understand the reason. Queen Qi was clearly able to defeat this swordsman from the All-Heavens Starfield with a stable strategy. Why would she be so anxious and use such an intense method? The battle ended. During the banquet, there was a flash of red. Ning Chen entered the battle and helped the injured Lin Yuzhen. He condensed his phoenix essence and sealed her injuries. "How are you feeling?" Ning Chen asked with a grave expression. "I'm fine," Lin Yuzhen replied with a forced smile. On the main seat, light flashed through Shui Wuyue's eyes. It would appear that Queen Qi's injuries yesterday were truly not light. That was why she was unwilling to fight for a long time and decided to end the battle quickly. "Queen Qi has won this battle. Your Highness, congratulations," Mei Wuhan stood up and said with a smile. Lin Yuzhen nodded her head and returned to her seat with the support of the man beside her. After the two battles, Shui Wuyue and Lin Yuzhen both entered the next round. The results were not unexpected. The strong won. This was an undeniable truth. Next, Sword God Baiyu and Mu Chang'e defeated their opponents within 100 exchanges. The only battle that had yet to begin was between Ning Chen and the red-clothed woman from the Zhurong family. During the banquet, Ning Chen stood up. The red-clothed woman also stood up and walked to the front of the banquet. "I am Ning Chen. Lady, please show me your skills. The current generation Zhurong, please." Now that the etiquette was over, the battle was about to begin. The atmosphere in the palace suddenly became quiet. Everyone focused, earnestly waiting for the battle to begin. One was the 9th son of Mo Gate, whose name shook the starry sky, and the other was the descendant of the Zhurong family that had not appeared in 10,000 years. The result of this battle was hard to predict. Ha! With a light shout, Ning Chen's body glowed with red light. Taisher appeared and his sword technique reappeared. Ruohuo, raise your sword. As the flames of battle descended, the red-clothed woman opened her mouth. In an instant, flames soared into the sky. It was as if a fiery divine sword had appeared. Chapter 845. In the pavilion within the pavilion, the limitless sword banquet was activated. Divine flames surged, and waves of fire swept out, frightening the surroundings. The current Zhurong of the Zhurong family, the sword supremacy, started the battle with his sword. The Taoist sword Taishe and the divine sword flame clashed. With a world-shaking vibration, the void between the two was annihilated. Phoenix fire and divine flames burned the world. In the world-shocking battle of swords, a sea of fire spread. In the flames, two red-clothed figures crossed each other. The only sword at the peak was an unparalleled ability. Sword technique, Prairie Fire. With a slash of the sword, Phoenix fire rampaged. Scarlet flames raged, unstoppable. Zhurong's eyes focused. The fiery sword turned, and flames surged, blocking the scarlet flames in the sword. The two were similar. They were both at the peak of the sword supremacy, and they controlled the divine yang fire. Between their moves, there was endless destruction. With a boom, the two moves collided. Waves of fire spread out violently. The two retreated at the same time. Sword technique, nothingness. After one sword, another came out. The nothingness sword swallowed the heavens and destroyed the earth, slashing towards the woman in front of him. Zhurong stepped forward, and in a flash, dodging the attack. Like fire, he met the attack with his sword. With a boom, the two moves collided. Sword chi spread out, and waves of anger roared. Heavenly fire refinement. After a few breaths of time, everyone knew that Zhurong had condensed his body. Flames rose around his body, and divine flames surged on his sword. A famous move appeared. Heavenly fire refinement, and the world was in a calamity. In the pavilion within the pavilion, the temperature rose rapidly. Even the restrictions and formations could not stop it. The talisman civilization was destroyed, showing signs of instability. On the main seat, Mei Wuhan frowned slightly. He raised his right hand, and immediately, snowflakes fell from the sky. Layers of restraints stabilized the formation that was about to collapse. In the battle, waves of fire swept out. The majestic fire elemental energy rose to the peak. The scarlet divine sword kept buzzing, and the sword body changed, almost becoming transparent. The raging flames burned the sky and boiled the sea. Its power was shocking. Outside the battle, the experts on the sword were shocked. Was this the true flame of the fire god? It was truly terrifying. The divine flame arrived, and its power was shocking. Ning Chen's expression became serious. Taishe crossed over, and Phoenix fire rose, soaring into the sky. Nirvana. A sword of nirvana, sword light crisscrossed, an incomparably magnificent sword energy crisscrossed between the heavens and the earth. The sword had reached the pinnacle, breaking through the pinnacle, unparalleled and unique. In the next moment, sword radiance poured down in torrents. Rumbling sounds reverberated throughout the universe. The sword radiance and divine flames collided to the extreme, frightening both gods and ghosts. With an almost undetectable groan, the sword light broke through the divine flames and pierced through his body. Blood stained his clothes. In the blink of an eye, Hong Yi arrived and slit his throat with her sword. Then, she stopped half an inch away. "Miss, you lost." Ning Chen looked at the woman in red and said. Zhurong's body stiffened. After a while, he slowly relaxed and nodded. "Thank you for showing mercy." Ning Chen smiled politely. He put down the sword in his hand and said, "I took advantage of my cultivation body. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to defeat you." He had the body of a phoenix and was not afraid of fire. Although the fire of Zhurong was strong, it could do nothing to him. Young master is too modest. Zhurong suppressed his injuries and sighed. In the past, when I heard of young master's name, I didn't think much of it. But after today's battle, I realized young master's strength is truly unfathomable. Strong, he was unquestionably strong. She knew her own strength. Under the 4th level, she could fight against anyone. However, facing this person, she had no chance of victory. The pressure was not from her cultivation base, but the powerlessness of her moves. It was as if all her moves had been seen through. When she attacked, she had already lost. It was rumored that this child had only cultivated for 100 years. In just 100 years, his knowledge of martial arts had already reached such a level. It was truly too terrifying. In the main seat, Mei Wuhan looked down. She had known that Mo Gate's 9th son would gain the upper hand, but she hadn't expected him to win so quickly. Big sister, it's time to announce the result, reminded Jing Wuxia softly. Mei Wuhan calmed herself and calmly said, for this round, young Master Ning has won. Congratulations. Ning Chen cupped his fists and politely bowed in response. The two of them returned to their respective seats. The first round of the martial arts competition had ended. The 5 stronger cultivators had advanced and were preparing for the next round. Everyone, please rest for a moment. Next will be the second round. Because there are 5 people, one person will automatically advance. Mei Wuhan looked at everyone and continued, the order will be the same as the previous round. We will draw lots. The person who draws 5 will directly advance. The spectating sword experts nodded slightly. Although this kind of decision was somewhat unfair, and the person who directly advanced would have a great advantage in the next round, luck was sometimes also a part of strength. Second sister, you should be the last one to choose. Mei Wuhan shifted his gaze and looked at the woman beside him. Yes. Wu Yue Shui nodded indifferently. A sword attendant entered the hall, carrying a wooden tray. 5 jade slips were lying on the tray. There were numbers carved on the back, which would determine the order of the next round. Ning Chen, Lin Yuzhen, and the others each took a jade slip. After looking through it, they placed it on their own table. To the right of the main seat, Wu Yue Shui took the last jade slip. After looking through it, he passed it to the person beside him. Mei Wuhan looked at it and was slightly stunned. On the jade slip, the number 5 was engraved, indicating that Wu Yue Shui would be the person who directly advanced in this round. Mei Wuhan came back to his senses and showed the jade slip to everyone in the hall. He smiled and said, it seems that our sword pavilion has picked up a bargain this time. Below, the sword experts from various major star regions looked at each other. This was really the worst result. The second pavilion master of Sword Pavilion's strength was one of the best among the 5. Now that he had a bye, who could stop him in the next round? During the banquet, Lin Yuzhen, who drew the number 1, stood up and prepared for her second battle. Ning Chen's eyes flashed and he said, Your Highness, your injuries are not light. If you can't do it, don't force yourself. Don't worry, I know what to do. Lin Yuzhen responded softly and walked towards the front of the banquet. Not far away, Mu Chang'e, who was dressed in black, also stood up and walked out of his seat. Seeing this, Ning Chen was stunned. King Qi's opponent was Senior Honorable Sword. In front of the banquet, King Qi and Honorable Sword stood facing each other. One was the King of Beiki, while the other was the Supreme of Heaven's Sanctum. They were both unfathomable experts, and today, they were opponents for the first time. During the banquet, Ning Chen's face flashed with worry. In terms of cultivation, King Qi definitely had the upper hand. However, King Qi was now injured, while Honorable Sword was at his peak and had comprehended the 12th sword, which surpassed the limit of swordsmanship. The result of this battle was very unfavorable for King Qi. These two were his friends, and he didn't want to see anything happen to either of them. Show me your full strength. I won't hold back just because you are injured. This is disrespectful to you and my sword. Mu Chang'e waved his hand, and the heavenly palace appeared. The heavenly sword reappeared, and the sound of the sword resounded through the palace. As you wish. Lin Yuzhen's expression turned serious. She waved her hand and the sword appeared. The heavenly weapon was unsheathed, and the cry of the phoenix filled the sky. It was difficult for both heavenly swords to exist in the same world. Today, it was time to determine who was superior. Chapter 846. At the Limitless Sword Banquet, the atmosphere was stagnant. The only two heaven-grade weapons in the Sword Evaluation Conference had appeared at the same time for their first battle. Phoenix Cry and Heavenly Sword were unsheathed. The swords at the pinnacle of the human world clashed. Cold light shot out in all directions. The clash between the two experts caused the clanging of swords to ring out. The two swords clashed unceasingly, creating a beautiful and melodious sound of swords, one sound after another. Eighth sword, Emperor Sword. His opponent knew that probing was unnecessary. Mu Chang'e attacked with his ultimate move. The Emperor Sword appeared, shining with a dazzling golden light. The sword light slashed down, splitting the void. Lin Yuzhen swung her sword to block. With a loud vibration, the Emperor Sword shattered. The phoenix broke through the air and slashed towards the former. Ninth sword, Divine Domain. The phoenix-shaped sword Qi attacked. Mu Chang'e shouted, and the sword intent around him spread out. The Divine Domain appeared, and the void of the main hall collapsed. The crisscrossing sword Qi drowned the phoenix sword. The sword intent was endless, and it continued to slash towards the king. Lin Yuzhen stepped forward and instantly dodged the sword light. Soon after, she gathered her essence and the phoenix cry resounded, destroying the divine domain with one slash. With a loud bang, the divine sword slashed down. The divine domain couldn't withstand the extreme power and collapsed. Phoenix danced 9 heavens. Lin Yuzhen was injured and didn't want to fight for a long time. She used her ultimate essence, and lightning surged around her. Like a graceful king, her moves became faster and faster. Mu Chang'e blocked 2 swords and was hit by 1. He was the first to be injured. 10th sword, Immortal Slaying. The 10th sword appeared, full of killing intent. An abnormally powerful stone sword phantom fell from the sky. Lin Yuzhen focused, and lightning crisscrossed on the Phoenix Cry sword. The sword light met the killing sword head-on. Blood splattered, and her arm was dyed red. Lin Yuzhen didn't retreat, and her sword broke through the former's protective sword Qi. Mu Chang'e took half a step back, and a sword wound appeared on his left shoulder. Blood seeped out, soaking his clothes. You're seriously injured, but you still have such battle strength. You're indeed worthy of the title of King Qi. Mu Chang'e waved his hand to seal the wound on his shoulder. He looked at the cross-dressing king in front of him, and his expression became serious. Heavenly Sword turned around, and thousands of sword Qi soared into the sky. It's the 11th sword. During the banquet, Ning Chen's expression turned serious. The victor was about to be decided. The 11th sword was unleashed. The sword Qi was endless. The ultimate move of the human world was perfect and flawless. Wherever the sword Qi passed, the heaven and earth would collapse. Lin Yuzhen had been waiting for this opportunity for a long time. With a light shout, she pushed her cultivation to the limit. Jinqi rushed to her head, and her long hair danced in the wind. The figure that disappeared in the blink of an eye appeared once more amidst the rain of swords. Lightning flashed, blocking wave after wave of sword Qi. The figure continued advancing forward, swiftly closing in on the swordsman before him. The sword went in an inch and blood flowed out. Seeing that he had succeeded, the injured Mu Chang'e raised his hand and grabbed the edge of the Phoenix Cry sword. The divine sword was immediately restrained and could not go any further. Sword 12. The heavenly palace shook, and an exceptionally dazzling sword radiance coiled out. The sword radiance was limitless, and an incomparably majestic power spread out. Outside the battle, the swordsmen felt their hearts sink, and found it difficult to breathe. It was a sword that surpassed the limits of the mortal world. Heaven and earth couldn't bear it. Expanses of the void collapsed and turned into nothingness. Lin Yuzhen's eyes shined. She forcefully raised her true essence, wanting to block this attack. Suddenly, a change occurred. Lin Yuzhen was heavily injured, and she had been through a series of battles. Her internal injuries erupted, instantly scattering her condensed true essence. Puff! Blood sprayed out, dyeing her clothes red. Lin Yuzhen staggered, unable to block in time. In that moment of crisis, Ning Chen, who had been watching the battle from his seat, rushed out. He raised his left arm, using his body to block the divine sword. Clang! The sword light slashed down, dazzling everyone. Heavenly Palace stood on Ning Chen's left arm, causing a waterfall of blood to spray out. Ka-ka! An ear-piercing cracking sound rang out. A broken bracer appeared on Ning Chen's left arm. After receiving the 12th sword, the cracks had become even more severe. In the next moment, the bracer disappeared, once more hiding in Ning Chen's arm. Senior Honorable Swordmaster, I apologize. Ning Chen looked at the person in front of him, an apologetic expression on his face. Princess Qi is my friend. I can't watch as something happens to her. Interfering in another person's duel was a very rude thing to do, but he had no other choice. Mu Chang'e frowned. He waved his right hand and put away Heavenly Palace. He lightly said, "Don't do it again." "Thank you, Senior." Ning Chen respectfully bowed and thanked him. Mu Chang'e didn't say anything else. He walked back to his seat. The Heavenly Mansion Sword Sovereign wins this round. Mei Wuhan said from the main seat. He looked at Ning Chen's injured left arm, a light flashing in his eyes. In the next round, Mo Gate's 9th disciple would be facing Sword God Baiyu. However, the battle hadn't even started yet, and the hand that used the sword was already injured. It was truly unwise. Ning Chen led Lin Yuzhen to her seat. He didn't say anything else and directly walked back to his seat to welcome his opponent. During the banquet, Sword God Baiyu, dressed in white, stood up and walked towards his seat. I am Ning Chen. I would like to challenge Mr. Baiyu. Please. Sword God Baiyu nodded. He clenched his right hand, and a clear sky appeared on his right side. His sword hadn't been drawn, but frost filled the sky. Ning Chen focused. Taisher's blade appeared. An instant later, his sword moved. The battle began in an instant. Flames spread and sword light crisscrossed. Sword God Baiyu didn't move his feet. His body constantly moved, dodging sword light after sword light. The sword intent of the unsheathed sword became heavier and heavier. At the sword conference, the elegance of a heaven-grade sword unsheathed was the way of the sword. The heaven-grade evaluation came from his mouth. Thus, Ning Chen knew better than anyone else how terrifying the sword technique of the person in front of him was. His sword became fiercer and fiercer, using all his strength to suppress his opponent's chances of drawing his sword. The green sword, the red flame, the phoenix's speed, the famous sword of Taoism, complemented each other and fought against a peak opponent. First move, soul retention. After 10 moves, Sword God Baiyu stood still and drew his sword. In an instant, a sword reflected the snow, leaving behind the soul of a ghost. When the sword was drawn, the heavens were split open. The divine sword flashed through the gap. A sword that was too fast to react was tempered thousands of times. Ah! The sword got close and entered half an inch into Ning Chen's body. Ning Chen groaned and quickly retreated 10 zhang away. When the sword left Ning Chen's body, blood gushed out and dyed his red clothes. It was a shocking sword attack. Even someone as knowledgeable as Ning Chen couldn't avoid it. There was always someone better than you. The martial arts in the world were vast and profound. No one could fully comprehend it. If one could cultivate it to the extreme, it would be enough to challenge the world. Sword God Baiyu, who specialized in one path, had simplified the extreme to the extreme. His sword had left behind a soul, stunning everyone present. You are the first person in the past 100 years who could withstand my attack without losing battle power. You are the 9th son of Mahist. Everyone says that you are good at scheming. However, judging from your sword, you are definitely not a weakling. Come, show me your true ability. Prove that I didn't misjudge you. Sword God Baiyu's expression was extremely serious. Sword intent circled around him. He didn't hide his powerful cultivation at all. He was at the peak of true realm. He was the strongest among the strong. Looking at the person in front of him, Ning Chen's expression also became serious. He had to get the position of the chief disciple. Before that, he would fight to his heart's content. He took a step forward. Phoenix fire soared into the sky. In the burning flames, the 4 symbols borrowed power. Ning Chen's black hair instantly turned blood red and danced in the wind. Chapter 847. A pavilion within a pavilion, a banquet on swords. The top swordsmen of the world were fighting. Taisha unsheathed their swords and clashed with each other. The shockwaves from the swords roared and surged. The 2 figures kept crossing each other. They were fast and powerful. Their swords had reached the extreme and returned to their original state. Their moves were not too extravagant, but every move and style was exquisite and precise. Every strike was deadly. Clanging sounds of swords resounded throughout the hall. Numerous sword-wielding experts from various regions were watching the battle from outside the battlefield. All of them were attracted by this beautiful battle of the sword, and they were unable to take their eyes off it. They were unwilling to miss a single move. If you're so capable, why do you need to scheme against others and be despised by the world? Sword God Baiyu looked at the young man in front of him and said, "Life is unpredictable. There will always be places where martial arts are lacking. It's easy to dodge a spear in the open but hard to defend against a stab in the dark. To protect myself, I won't be stingy." Ning Chen stepped forward. His blood-red hair danced in the wind. The phoenix appeared behind him. Flames rose and burned the world. "What a pity about your sword," Sword God Baiyu whispered. Frost surged on the clear sky sword. Endless cold air spread. The entire world was instantly frozen. It was covered in silver. Sword technique, prairie fire. The cold air arrived and the phoenix fire rose. Ning Chen waved his sword. Taisha moved. The sword fire broke through the air, burning the sky and boiling the sea. In an instant, the ice melted and the snow melted. The flames were extinguished. It was a stalemate. After one move, the world returned to normal. Heavenly creation. Understanding his opponent's sword, Sword God Baiyu's figure trembled. White light rose around him. He used a move that had never been seen before. Suddenly, the sword split open the starry sky. White feathers drifted. Sword technique, heavenly sword. Extreme power descended. Ning Chen's expression turned serious. He used his ultimate move. Amidst the rising phoenix fire, a green sword light soared into the sky. It was dazzling and split the void. An instant later, the heavenly sword slashed down. Wherever the sword light passed, there was a dazzling green light. The sky was destroyed and the earth collapsed. The 2 extremes clashed. The wind stopped in an instant. Then, the remaining power exploded. The void between the 2 shook violently. There was an ear-piercing shattering sound. Countless spatial cracks crisscrossed and spread outside the battle. Inside the main hall, layers of formations glowed brilliantly. Talismans were extinguished, blocking the aftershocks of the battle that were spreading in all directions. Outside the battle, everyone's expression became more and more shocked. He had spent his entire life learning the way of the sword, but today, he had finally learned the way of the sword. Second sister, how confident are you in winning against these two people? Mei Wuhan asked as he watched the battle from the main seat. 100%. Moonless Water said in an indifferent tone. Mei Wuhan nodded and didn't ask any more questions. On the left, Jing Wuxia looked at the two people in the battle. His eyes flashed with worry. If Lord Ning wanted to repair the two divine weapons, he would have to win first place in the Sword Everlasting Banquet. Judging from the current situation, even if young Master Ning managed to defeat the White Feather Sword God, he would still consume a lot of energy. If he were to encounter Second Sister, there was almost no chance of him winning. In the battle between the two experts had reached its climax. Swords flew back and forth, and the flames of war filled the sky. Sword art, nothing. He used his ultimate move again. His sword will swallow the world. Taisher's blade slashed out in Ning Chen's hand. The moon-shaped sword qi surged and swallowed everything in its path. The White Feather Sword God took a step back and his figure retreated 100 feet to avoid the sharpest edge. 100 feet away, the clear sky was filled with snow. The sword slashed down. With a loud bang, the moon-shaped sword qi collapsed. The aftershock spread out. The White Feather Sword God took a step back and his figure turned back to attack again. The simple sword was simple and unadorned, but it was so exquisite that it was difficult to dodge. At the beginning of the sword, no move was better than a move. The famed swords clashed. Cold stars filled the eyes. The killing light in the eyes changed several times. It was ruthless. Ah! There was a muffled groan. The two swords crossed, and their bodies were dyed red. The quality of the sword will was equal. It was difficult to determine the winner. The sword was the only one that existed in the world. Nirvana. It was a carefree battle. There were no schemes or schemes. The battle intent in Ning Chen's eyes grew stronger and stronger. His sword reached the limit, and 10,000 swords soared into the sky. The magnificent sword qi was endless, crisscrossing. It was so dazzling that it illuminated the entire sword pavilion. The ultimate power appeared. Heaven and earth were in mourning, and all things prostrated. It was difficult to withstand the sword's ultimate power. Frost of the 9 prefectures. The White Feather Sword God focused his eyes and fixed his sword. With a light shout, frost rose around his body. The wind and snow surged, and the sword danced. In the next moment, the two extremes clashed. Sword qi and frost filled the air. It was the first time the world had seen such a shocking power. Ah! A pool of blood splashed. The two of them were affected by the ultimate power. They both took half a step back, and the corners of their mouths were dyed red. The unusually fierce battle added new blood to the two of them. It was difficult to determine the winner. Sitting at the banquet, the few swordsmen's eyes were full of seriousness. If they were to encounter one of these two, what were their chances of winning? On the right side of the main seat, Shui Wuyue looked at the red-clothed figure in the battle. Her eyes narrowed slightly. She knew that he was still holding back. At least, he had not used the moves he had comprehended from the Sword Codex. Did he not need them? Or was he holding back for when he faced her? 9th Sword, Divine Domain. At this moment, there was a sudden change in the battle. The sword domain spread. Sword without beginning, sword without end. Sword qi appeared out of nowhere and slashed toward the white-clothed sword god. Tisk. Sword god Baiyu could not react to the sudden change in moves. The sword light slashed across, and blood stained his white robe. In an instant, the red-clothed figure flashed past. The wind and clouds on the sword changed. The sword will gathered. Sword god Baiyu waved his sword to block, but he was injured first. He did not have enough strength to gather his strength. The moment the two swords clashed, he was forced back a few steps. Formless sword. With the accumulation of advantages, the sword style was used again. Between heaven and earth, the crisscrossing sword chi received the order and gathered rapidly. The sword was concentrated again, and it broke through the sky. The divine sword flew across the sky, and the sword blocked the ultimate power. However, the first move was defeated. The two swords clashed. Sword god Baiyu was forced back. It was obvious that he was going to lose. Sky Frost 9 swords. Unwilling to lose, sword god Baiyu endured his injuries. With a light shout, he took a step forward and leaped up. His sword turned into a supreme state, and 9 swords flew across the sky. In an instant, the sword light flashed. The sky frost condensed into a sword. Wherever it passed, heaven and earth were frozen. Sword technique, 3 lights shine together. The red-clothed figure moved his sword, and his figure split into 3. The sword condensed into 3 figures, red, black, and white. 3 different sword wills. The black and white figures blocked the ultimate power. The red-clothed figure flashed out and instantly reached the sky. He raised his hand and clasped the sword of the former's right hand. The move of the 4 divisions was used again. Azure Dragon Fall. With the ultimate move, the Azure Dragon roared and locked the 2 figures. In an instant, they fell rapidly and crashed into the ground with a loud bang. The shockwaves from the shocking battle accumulated. In the center of the battle, a great formation collapsed. It could no longer withstand the shockwaves of the battle. The formation collapsed, and the shockwaves spread in all directions. The ground of the sword pavilion rumbled. Cracks appeared and spread continuously in all directions. On the main seat, Mei Wuhan stood up. With a wave of his right hand, a dark red divine sword appeared. He stabbed the sword into the ground, and an incomparably powerful force spread out, instantly stabilizing the collapsing ground of the sword pavilion. In the battle, the dust settled, and the 2 figures appeared. In front of sword god Baiyu, the red-clothed figure stood quietly. Drops of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. He forcefully used his body that was restricted by the dragon gate. However, the result of this battle was already clear. Was it worth it? In the shockwaves, sword god Baiyu looked at the red-clothed young man in front of him and asked. It was worth it. Ning Chen raised his hand to wipe away the blood at the corner of his mouth. Sword god Baiyu narrowed his eyes and didn't ask any more questions. He nodded. I lost this round. On the main seat, Mei Wuhan looked at the 2 figures below. The result was as he had expected. Mo Gate's 9th son had won. Ever since he had appeared out of nowhere, he had never been defeated. Time and time again, he had created miracles, causing others to have a whole new level of respect for him. Young Master Ning, congratulations. Mei Wuhan said with a smile on his face. Ning Chen nodded and nodded as a form of greeting, and then he strode back to his seat. The 2 battles had been more intense than the last. Everyone recovered their wits and sighed emotionally. The Tao of the sword was truly broad and profound. Everyone, please rest for a moment. The next round will begin. The rules will be the same as before. We will draw lots to determine the order. Because there are still 3 people remaining, there will still be 1 person without a fight, said Mei Wuhan. The sword attendants entered the hall. There were 3 jade slips placed on a wooden tray. They would determine the order of the final battle. Sitting down, Ning Chen and Mu Chang'e each picked up a jade slip. After looking through it, they silently put it down. There's no need to bring the 2nd pavilion master's jade slip up. Just show it to everyone. Mei Wuhan said from the main seat. The sword attendant nodded and opened the last jade slip on the wooden tray. Instantly, the entire hall was shocked. The jade slip clearly had the number 3 carved on it. This indicated that Sword Pavilion's 2nd pavilion master had once more directly advanced. This unbelievable result caused an uproar. Everyone looked at each other, not knowing what to say. Sword Pavilion's second pavilion master's luck was truly too good. He had only needed to fight once to directly advance to the final battle. This way, even if Emo Gate's ninth son or the Heavenly Mansion Sword Sovereign had fought many battles, it would be impossible for them to win against Sword Pavilion's second pavilion master. During the banquet, Ning Chen and Mu Chang'e stood up and walked to the front of the table without saying a word. Genesis Supreme appeared. Ning Chen held his sword in front of him and softly said, "Senior Sword Sovereign, please excuse me." Mu Chang'e wasn't in a rush to attack. He looked at the person in front of him and asked, "Do you really want to become the champion of this year's Limitless Sword Banquet?" "I must," Ning Chen calmly replied. Mu Chang'e nodded and waved his hand. The heavenly tower stabbed into the ground and said, "From now on, I'll give you an hour to suppress your injuries and prepare for the next battle." Ning Chen was startled, but he quickly recovered and respectfully bowed. "Hurry up." Mu Chang'e calmly accepted the former's salute and said. Ning Chen nodded and didn't say anything else. He sat down cross-legged and suppressed his injuries. On the main seat, Mei Wuhan frowned when he saw this. He hadn't expected such a situation to occur. First Pavilion Master. Sensing Mei Wuhan's gaze, Mu Chang'e calmly said, "This shouldn't be considered breaking the rules. Sword Pavilion has already been given a bye twice. Can't you wait for an hour?" "Of course not." Mei Wuhan shook his head and said, "It's your freedom to decide. It's only an hour. Sword Pavilion can still afford to wait." "That's good." Mu Chang'e indifferently replied. He looked back at the red-robed youth who had his eyes closed and was recuperating. The champion of the Limitless Sword Banquet was meaningless to him. If this boy wanted it, he would give it to him. He couldn't accept being called a senior for nothing. Sword Pavilion's second pavilion master was indeed immeasurably strong. However, legends would always be overturned. Today, the time had come. Chapter 848. In the everlasting sword banquet, Sword Venerable had given up and won an hour, giving knowing destiny a chance to heal. The three pavilion masters of Sword Pavilion were calmly waiting. On the right, Moonless Shui, who was about to step forward, was still expressionless, so cold that no one dared to look directly at him. Below the seats, the cultivators on the swords were also waiting quietly. After watching several battles in succession, they were also somewhat tired. More importantly, the next battle would be the final battle. They hoped to see an evenly matched battle, and not a one-sided suppression. Sword Pavilion's second pavilion master's strength had already been displayed in the first battle. His overwhelming power made it so that anyone below the fourth level had no hope of victory. As for Mo Gate's ninth son, each time he fought, he would give them a new shock. However, his next opponent was Sword Pavilion's second pavilion master. No one knew if he could continue this miracle. An hour quickly passed, and at this moment, Ning Chen slowly opened his eyes. The surging true energy around him gradually calmed down and was withdrawn into his body. "Don't lose," Mu Chang'e said as he strode toward the banquet. On the right side of the main seat, the silent Moonless Shui stood up. In that instant, everyone couldn't help but look over. "It's here." Everyone's expressions focused. The final chief disciple of the sword banquet was finally about to begin. As he walked down the stage, Moonless Shui's expression was calm and cold. Sword Pavilion's second pavilion master, a supreme expert of the sword banquet, would once again display his supreme technique. Sunset flew over and placed it in front of him. Boundless sword pressure swept out, causing the world to tremble and distort. On the main seat, Mei Wuhan looked down. The dark red divine sword in front of him hummed, and rings of sword pressure spread out, sealing the battle. "Please." There was no need for an introduction, so Ning Chen solemnly said. Genesis Supreme unsheathed his sword and transformed into a stream of light. "Please." Moonless Shui softly said, his voice still emotionless. In front of him, sunset glow left its sheath, and the sky instantly filled with dazzling light. The battle began. Within the battlefield, the pressure of the sword spread out. Even though there was no wind, there were waves, and true energy surged. Without hesitation, Ning Chen's body shone with red light, and his black hair turned red. Phoenix Ancestral Awakening. In the blink of an eye, his sword cut through the clouds. Ning Chen attacked first, phoenix fire coiling around his sword. Wu Yue Shui waved his sword. The divine sun circled around him and endless heavenly fire burned the world. His sword qi tore through the air and was shockingly powerful. The two swords clashed. Waves of fire surged in all directions. The two swords that had surpassed the peak and were now the only two swords clashed once again. Yin Moon Heavenly Sun. Knowing his opponent's strength, Wu Yue Shui raised his hand and unleashed his most powerful attack. The divine sun changed and a black moon appeared in the sky. A terrifying sword pressure swept out, shaking the heaven and earth. Immortal technique, waxing, 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 waning. Ning Chen's expression turned serious. Taisher condensed his energy, and a bright moon rose and descended from the sky. Immortal arts versus sword mantras, two of the most terrifying cultivation methods in the world. As soon as they clashed, the shockwaves from their clash were so terrifying that they could destroy the heavens and split the earth. Everything around the two of them turned into nothingness. The knowing destiny state cultivator who had the phoenix origin body was not afraid of fire. However, the second master of the sword Garrett was exceptional in terms of cultivation and swordsmanship. He was the only one in the world with the clear sky in his hand. Sword art, Dragon Phoenix Burial. Borrowing the power of each other, the dragon and phoenix roared in harmony. Ning Chen moved, and the Taisher luck in his hand turned into the ultimate vitality. With a swing of his sword, the dragon and phoenix appeared. The dragon phoenix sword qi pierced through the air and destroyed everything in its path. Wu Yue Shui's eyes turned serious. He turned around and slashed at the clear sky. Streaks of sword qi flew out and collided with the incoming attack. With a loud bang, the dragon-shaped sword qi dissipated. The phoenix arrived, and Wu Yue Shui raised his left hand to block the sword qi. With a loud bang, the phoenix-shaped sword qi dissipated. The powerful shockwaves scattered in all directions, and terrifying cracks appeared on the ground. When the shockwaves dissipated, the second master of the sword Garrett, who was as immovable as a mountain, was not injured at all. His expression was as cold as before. Outside the battle, many sword supremacies were shocked. They were amazed by the battle between the two, and they were even more shocked by the second master of the sword Garrett. During the banquet, Lin Yuzhen, Mu Chang'e, and sword god Baiyu looked at the intense battle in front of them. Their eyes flashed. The second master of the sword Garrett's strength was unfathomable. In the battle, Ning Chen's phoenix fire continued to rise. His battle intent was high, and he was not shaken at all by the fact that his attack had been blocked. Bring out your full strength. Otherwise, you have no chance of winning today. Wu Yue Shui waved his hand to disperse the shockwaves around him and said indifferently. As you wish. Ning Chen replied. Genesis Supreme swept out, and a majestic sword aura swept out. Before the move was even executed, the world had already moved. 6 paths fall, myriad demonic tribulations, grand forbidden sword. The forbidden sword appeared, and sword light flashed. Ning Chen's feet trembled, and he instantly soared into the sky. Too slow. On the ground, Wu Yue Shui looked at the sky, and he instantly appeared in front of Ning Chen and slashed out with his sword. Arg! With a muffled groan, the forbidden sword didn't have enough energy, and the sword qi dissipated. The shockwaves from the two swords were blocked, and blood flowed out from the corner of Ning Chen's mouth. He had been completely suppressed in this battle. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated. Although your move is powerful, it needs time to accumulate energy. The battle in the ancient battlefield has already exposed the weakness of this move. Don't you know it? Wu Yue Shui said coldly. Nirvana. Ning Qin shouted without saying a word. Genesis Supreme turned around, and the sword chi in the world appeared again, crisscrossing and dazzling. Seeing this, Wu Yue Shui's eyes flashed with surprise. He stepped in the air and quickly retreated. However, at this moment, numerous sword lights gathered around Hong Yi's body. Immediately, they broke through the air and shot out endlessly, crossing the heavens and the earth. Wu Yue Shui turned his palm, and his fingers slashed across the sword. Immediately, flames spread out, forming a barrier in front of him. In the next moment, a rumbling sound echoed through the world, and the messy sword chi scattered, sinking into the ground. Chi! The sword chi sliced through clothes, and a smear of red seeped out. In the aftermath, a purple figure appeared, and blood stained his left shoulder. Wu Yue Shui's eyes turned cold. He raised his hand and touched the wound. With a flash of light, the wound healed instantly. It's impolite not to reciprocate. Now, we don't owe each other anything. Ning Qin stopped and looked at the woman in front of him calmly. Very good. Wu Yue Shui's eyes turned colder. He stepped out, and a wave of fire soared into the sky. His cultivation, which had surpassed the peak of the true realm, burst out, and he was infinitely close to the half-step fourth realm. An instant later, the purple figure disappeared. His true essence was vast, and purple flames filled the sky. He slashed with his sword, and the void was split open. Ning Chen's eyes narrowed, and he swung his sword. With a loud bang, his body was pushed back dozens of feet, and his palm split open, bleeding. 100 Suns returned to the east. Ignoring his injuries, Genesis Supreme's red light shone brightly in Ning Chen's hand. The sun scripture martial art reappeared, and 100 suns soared into the sky. The boundless fire essence covered the sky, and in an instant, it turned into a meteor shower and fell. Great Flame World, Emperor Lu. As the 100 suns fell, Wu Yue Shui looked at the sky. A strange light flashed in his eyes, and he shouted softly. Immediately, purple flames surged into the sky, and a huge flaming statue appeared. It raised its hands, and its divine power blocked the 100 suns. Chapter 849. In the final match of the Everlasting Banquet, Ning Chen was facing Sword Pavilion's second pavilion master. The two of them unleashed their full power, fully displaying the prowess of peak experts. Strong, so strong that it was unshakable. Fast, so fast that it was shocking. Every move was a dazzling display of light. Emperor Yen appeared, his body of flames towering into the sky as he resisted the descent of 100 suns. The world shook, and the 100 suns collapsed. Flames rained down outside the battlefield. On the main seat, Mei Wuhan waved his hand, scattering the flames around him. His eyes focused on the two people in front of him. Just where was Mo Gates' 9th son's bottom line? How much strength was he using? 50%, 70%, or 100%? Sword art, Heavenly Dragon shakes. With a slash of his sword, an azure dragon roared. Ning Chen's figure vanished, his body moving with his sword. Moonless Shui swung his sword to block the azure dragon sword chi. The moment Genesis Supreme's attack approached, he raised his left hand and pointed his sword at the Dao sword. The shockwaves caused the clothes of the two to flutter. When they came back to their senses, they waved their swords and clashed. The sword was so close that no one could see it clearly. The person so close was so cold that no one dared to look directly at him. Outside the battlefield, the sword supremacies were watching the battle in front of them. They were shocked and confused at the same time. Given the second pavilion master's overwhelming cultivation, the battle should have ended long ago. On the main seats, Mei Wuhan and Jing Wuxia were quietly watching the battle. They were both surprised. In the sword pavilion, Shui Wuyue's attainments in swordsmanship were unparalleled. In particular, his comprehension of swordsmanship was the first in 1,000 years. Logically speaking, Shui Wuyue should be able to suppress him. More than 100 moves had already been exchanged, and Moonless Shui's expression had turned completely serious. He no longer held back. This child was different from others. Besides his cultivation, his experience, reaction, and comprehension of martial arts were flawless. It was rumored that this child had cultivated for less than 100 years, but he possessed such frightening knowledge of martial arts. It was truly shocking. Clang! The two swords clashed, and the auras of the swords crisscrossed. Moonless Shui changed his move, and Genesis Supreme changed his stance, quickly responding. In a battle of quick swords, the moment they touched, cold sparks flew everywhere. Sword style, remnant red. The sword style was unleashed again. The red light flashed, and the phoenix moved at extreme speed. Streaks of afterimages gradually disappeared. The sword was formless, and the sword was traceless. Wuyue Shui calmed himself down. His footsteps turned, and the movement technique of the sword cannon appeared for the first time. He moved swiftly and evaded the sword light. CI. The tip of the sword brushed past him, tearing his clothes apart. It was just a hair's breadth away. Wuyue Shui's figure retreated, avoiding the fatal sword. Three Suns fired Qilin. The battle was in a stalemate. Wuyue Shui waved his sword and condensed his yuan energy. Three suns rose around him. In the blink of an eye, the three suns turned into a Qilin and stepped out of the fire. Fire Qilin stepped into the air, igniting the entire void. It borrowed the power of this move, and its might was astonishing. The incomparably valiant pressure made people feel small and insignificant. 9 suns burning the heavens. Fire Qilin stepped forward, destroying the heavens and the earth. Ning Qin stepped forward, flames spreading on his sword. In the flames, 9 suns rose into the sky, 3 by 3, and collided with Fire Qilin. After a moment of silence, a terrifying explosion rang out. Boundless waves of fire roared and surged as they swept out in a frenzy. The aftermath of the attack made Ning Qin retreat half a step. The blood and qi in his body surged violently. On the other side, Wuyue Shui waved his hand to disperse the aftermath of the attack. He looked at Ning Qin coldly. The lack of cultivation was his weakness. If it weren't for the sword, the outcome of this battle would have been decided. However, as long as the battle continued, the flaws in his foundation and cultivation would become more and more obvious. In the main seats, the two sword pavilion masters who were watching the battle also saw this. Different thoughts flashed through their eyes. It's not good. Sword God Baiyu's expression turned grave. The difference in cultivation is too great. Moreover, the second pavilion master of the sword pavilion has cultivated the sword cannon. His attainments in the sword are extraordinary. This battle will be very difficult. Zhurong calmly continued, just in terms of attainments in the sword, Mo Gate's 9th son can be said to be peerless since ancient times. Adding on his shocking knowledge of martial arts and battle experience, he is able to fight with the second pavilion master of sword pavilion. However, this balance will be broken sooner or later. His cultivation isn't able to endure a battle on this level. The second pavilion master of sword pavilion is truly extraordinary. He is slowly exposing Mo Gate's 9th son's weaknesses. You and I have both exchanged blows with him, so you should know just how difficult it is to accomplish this, said Sword God Baiyu. Indeed. Zhurong nodded. This child's attacks are almost flawless. His reactions are also terrifyingly fast. From this, it can be seen just how shocking his knowledge of martial arts is. You should also know that martial arts knowledge isn't like cultivation. Heavenly geniuses can advance 1,000 miles in a day. Only by experiencing true battle can they increase their martial arts knowledge. There is no other way. It is rumored that this child has cultivated for less than 100 years, so how could he have such terrifying battle experience? Only like this can you show just how terrifying the second pavilion master of Sword Pavilion is. From the way he broke Mo Gates' attack to the way he exposed Mo Gates' ninth son's weakness, even if others knew about it, they wouldn't be able to do it, said Sword God Baiyu. Zhurong nodded. Let's see if this child has any way to deal with it. Just as the two of them were conversing, a green aura began to circulate around the phoenix. Fusing with the phoenix origin, it formed a terrifying green and red destructive energy. Thunder Force? Said Shui Wuyue slowly. Outside the battle, the swordsmen were also shocked. What was going on? It's the extreme heavenly lightning pearl, said Zhurong. Back when Mo Gates' ninth son had opened the ancient immortal realm, he had obtained 3 treasures, a broken bracer, the extreme heavenly lightning pearl, and the time restriction. The reason why Mo Gates' ninth son had been able to block the Heavenly Mansion Sword Sovereign's 12th sword was most likely because of that bracer. Now, the extreme heavenly lightning pearl had finally appeared. In the battle, the extreme heavenly lightning pearl's power appeared. Thunder Force rampaged and Phoenix Fire curled around it. When the two swords clashed again, the power was completely different. Shui Wuyue's eyes narrowed. His left palm gathered Yuan and slapped toward Ning Chen. Ning Chen put his fingers together. Sword Chi gathered. Thunder Force and Fire intersected to meet the incoming attack. With a boom, the battle separated. Ning Chen took a step forward and used the momentum to leap into the air. 6 Daos fall, myriad demonic tribulations, Imperial Forbidden Sword. The Imperial Forbidden Sword appeared again. Sword light crisscrossed. Majestic sword pressure descended from the sky. Seeing this, Shui Wuyue's expression turned serious. He stepped forward, wanting to break the attack. However, at that moment, Shui Wuyue felt his body go numb. Thunder Force loomed and sealed his body. Doomsday catastrophe. In an instant, the Imperial Forbidden Sword had gathered enough power. The Taisher sword spun. Layers of sword light broke through the air. There were tens of thousands of them, majestic and unparalleled. Emperor Ming. As the sword rain fell, Shui Wuyue's steps stabilized. Purple flames swept out from his body. The flame statue appeared again. It raised its hands to block the forbidden sword. Rumble. A terrifying collision rang out. The flame statue sank several dozen feet into the ground. Everywhere the Imperial Forbidden Sword passed, it left behind a scene of devastation. The sword pierced the statue, causing blood to spurt out. Sword Chi pierced through the statue and into Shui Wuyue's left shoulder, leaving behind a dazzling vermilion mark. Shui Wuyue took half a step back and stabilized himself. He waved his sword and gathered Yuan as he forcefully counterattacked. Taisher's sword blocked the heavenly fire. With a bang, Ning Chen also took half a step back, blocking the counterattack. Outside the battle, Sword God Baiyu's eyes flashed with surprise. He was filled with praise. The situation had returned to equilibrium. No one knew who would win or lose. I didn't think that the extreme heavenly thunder pearl would be so useful, Zhurong said. The extreme heavenly thunder pearl truly is extraordinary. However, the truly formidable one is Mahist Gate's ninth son. Thunder Force has the ability to numb the body. Although Shui Wuyue's cultivation is astonishing, he is not completely unaffected. The opportunity is extremely short. For him to be able to grasp it shows his reaction speed and control of the battle, Sword God Baiyu replied. Who do you think has a better chance of winning? Zhurong softly asked. Logically speaking, Shui Wuyue is unquestionably stronger. After all, once Sword Pavilion's second pavilion master gets used to the extreme heavenly thunder pearl's power, the battle will tilt in his favor once more. However, Mahist Gate's ninth son has already given us too many surprises. I also want to see someone overturn Sword Pavilion's undefeated history, so I hope that this child can win, Sword God Baiyu calmly said. Behind them, the sword experts from the various starfields also became solemn. Sword Pavilion's sword had been undefeated for far too long. If they could witness a miracle today, this trip would be worth it. Sword Pavilion's second pavilion master truly was terrifyingly powerful, but they also saw the hope brought by Mahist Gate's ninth son. In front of the banquet table, the white-hot battle grew even more intense. Hong Yi's body was wreathed in phoenix flames, and thunder crackled. The light from her sword seemed to be able to extinguish the world. She only attacked and did not defend. As the battle grew more and more intense, Ning Chen's body was dyed red once more. Blood dripped onto his sword, making it seem even more bewitching. "Do you need me to take action?" asked Demonic Body. "No need," Ning Chen replied. He looked at the woman in front of him and said, "I alone am enough." Demonic Body didn't say anything else. With the help of the Chaos Scroll, he completely concealed his aura so that he wouldn't be detected by the experts present. Sword 11. With a soft shout, sword chi gushed out like rain. A perfect move that exhausted the limits of the sword appeared. It was so sudden and so stunning. Outside the battle, Mu Chang'e suddenly stood up. Looking at the shocking scene in the battle, his eyes lit up. The 11th sword. He had actually comprehended the 11th sword. Behind them, the sovereigns from various regions were all shocked. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. Yingyue Heavenly Sun. In the battle, after the 11th sword, the moves of the swordsmanship scroll also appeared. Endless sword chi coiled around knowing destiny's body. The Yingyue Heavenly Sun soared into the sky in his left hand, and the sword waterfall in his right. His terrifying comprehension of the sword was undoubtedly displayed today. In the next moment, the two moves flowed together. Phoenix flames set the prairie ablaze, and thunder surged. The two moves merged together, and the power to devour the world broke through the air, destroying everything in sight. Great Flame World, burning the world. The final move was about to arrive. Shui Wuyue's expression became serious. He waved the sunset glow in his hand, and his body turned into a divine sun. A terrifying brilliance spread out, illuminating the entire world. On the main seats, Mei Wuhan and Jing Wuxia's expressions changed slightly. They stood up at the same time and joined forces to protect Sword Pavilion. In an instant, the two extremes collided. A terrifying power surged out, swallowing the two of them. Chapter 850. Within the pavilion, the final battle of the everlasting sword banquet had caused the entire world to collapse. Wherever the shockwaves passed, everything was reduced to nothingness. Outside the battle, the venerables were also affected by the shockwaves and hastily retreated. On the main seats, Mei Wuhan and Jing Wuxia, who were protecting Sword Pavilion, had to bear the brunt of the shockwaves. Even so, they couldn't help but feel their blood surge. Blood dripped down, dyeing the veil covering her face red. Jing Wuxia didn't pay attention to her injuries. She looked at the battle in front of her, worry filling her eyes. "It's over," Mei Wuhan calmly said. In the battle, the shockwaves dissipated and two figures appeared. Suddenly, there was a muffled groan. Above Shui Wuyue's chest, a bloody mist gushed out. Sword chi erupted, bringing with it a waterfall of dazzling blood. Ning Chen's sword had stopped moving forward. He looked at the woman in front of him, his eyes shining. "Why?" "There's no reason. I lost." Wuyue Shui retreated half a step, barely managing to stabilize himself. His expression was a bit weak. This was an unexpected result. Outside the battle, the sword experts were all shocked. None of them had thought that Imo Gate's ninth son would actually win. Second sister. To the left of the main seat, Jing Wuxia's figure flickered, and she rushed over to support the heavily injured Wuyue Shui. Help me back, said Wu Yueshui tiredly. Yes. Jing Wuxia nodded. She looked at the figure on the main seat and said, Big sister, I'll bring second sister back to rest first. Go. Mei Wuhan indifferently said. Jing Wuxia looked back at the red-robed youth in front of her. She softly said, Young Master Ning, congratulations. Jing Wuxia didn't say anything else. She carefully helped the person beside her to the back of the palace. After the two of them left, everyone's attention returned to the main hall, waiting for the result to be announced. On the main seat, Mei Wuhan's gaze swept over the red-robed figure below. She smiled. Young Master Ning, congratulations on becoming the chief disciple of this year's Everlasting Sword Banquet. With that, Lin Yuzhen let out a soft sigh of relief. In the end, he had succeeded. In Water Moon Hall, Jing Wuxia helped Wu Yueshui back. Her veil-covered face was filled with worry. She carefully helped Wu Yueshui sit on the bed. Second sister, are you sure you can't take that last strike? Jing Wuxia asked softly. Why do you ask? Wu Yueshui slowly opened his eyes and said. Jing Wuxia was silent for a moment before softly saying, No reason. It's just my intuition. Shui Wuyue closed his eyes once more and said indifferently, Don't think too much about it. That ninth son of Mo Gate's strength is already not inferior to mine. Moreover, he still held back in the end. If he had used his full strength, I already don't know how powerful he would have been. However, that final move just now has indeed surpassed mine. Jing Wuxia gently nodded. Although second sister denied it, she felt that second sister still held back in the end. Disregarding cultivation, the second sister's attainments in the sword had already surpassed the eldest sister's. She was the most outstanding sword genius in the sword pavilion in the past 1,000 years. Little sister, I no longer have the strength to fight for the Phoenix Cry sword. I might have to hand this matter over to you, Wu Yueshui reminded. Jing Wuxia was startled, and a look of struggle appeared in his eyes. Second sister is tired. You should go back first. The banquet isn't over yet, so you can't leave for too long, Moonless Shui said calmly. All right. Then you should rest well. Jing Wuxia nodded and spoke softly. He then stood up and walked out of the Water Moon Hall. Within the main hall of the pavilion, the results of the sword competition had already been decided. The new chief disciple of the Everlasting Sword Banquet had appeared. Everyone had stood up to offer their congratulations. Mei Wuhan walked down from the main seat, a smile on his face. His graceful and noble temperament caused people to raise their eyebrows. Young Master Ning, according to our agreement, my sword pavilion will do one thing for the chief disciple of the Everlasting Sword Banquet. As long as it's within our power, we definitely won't refuse, said Mei Wuhan. Hearing this, Ning Chen waved his right hand, and phoenix flames curled out. Within the flames, 2 broken divine weapons appeared, and an unusually powerful sword will spread out, shocking everyone present. Seeing the 2 swords in front of Ning Chen, Mei Wuhan narrowed his eyes. What powerful sword intent! Those 2 swords weren't any weaker than the Taisher sword in his hands. Head Pavilion Master, I want to ask Sword Pavilion to help repair these 2 swords. Is that possible? Asked Ning Chen. At this time, Jing Wuxia walked over from the back of the hall. She calmly stood to the side, not saying anything. She was waiting for her eldest sister to make a decision. It's fine. After a moment, Mei Wuhan nodded. Many thanks. Ning Chen let out a sigh of relief inwardly. It's what I should do. Mei Wuhan looked at the woman beside him and said, Third sister, send young Master Ning's 2 swords to the sword pagoda later. Yes. Jing Wuxia nodded in response. After giving his instructions, Mei Wuhan looked at the experts seated on the sword and said with a smile, I know that everyone here cherishes and loves their swords. Tomorrow morning, there will be attendants who will bring everyone to the sword pagoda. Our sword pavilion has collected many divine weapons over the years. Everyone can choose any one of them and take it away. Consider it a token of our sword pavilion's sincerity. Everyone looked at each other in surprise when they heard Lin Yun's words. The sword firmament pavilion's treasures were all extraordinary treasures, and every single one of them was priceless. Many thanks, Pavilion Master. Everyone stood up and bowed in unison. Young Master Ning. Jing Wuxia stepped forward and softly said. Ning Chen nodded and handed over his astral souls and origin sword to the woman in front of him. Jing Wuxia took the two broken divine items, thought for a moment, and said, Young Master Ning, repairing these two swords will take some time. Please don't be impatient. Okay. Ning Chen nodded and replied, Third Pavilion Master, I'll have to trouble you. Jing Wuxia smiled gently and didn't say anything else. She took the two divine items and walked towards the sword pagoda. During the banquet, the experts of the various regions began to leave one after another. They had witnessed several peak battles in one day, and the waves in their hearts couldn't be calmed down for a long time. Ning Chen, Mu Chang'e, Lin Yuzhen, and the others left. In front of the pavilion, Mu Chang'e stopped and looked at the young man beside him. He said, Ning Chen, where do you plan to go after this matter? Ning Chen was silent. After a moment, he shook his head and said, I don't know yet. Now, I just want to step into the immortal realm as soon as possible. Apart from that, I have no other thoughts. Mu Chang'e nodded and said, If it's you, I believe you can do it. We'll meet again someday. I hope we'll meet again in the future. Ning Chen came back to his senses and said in surprise, Senior Sword Sovereign, aren't you going to go to the Sword Pagoda tomorrow before leaving? No. Mu Chang'e shook his head and said, Everyone's Tao is different. For me, having one sword is enough. The Heavenly Tower is my sword and also my Tao. Ning Chen stopped and bowed respectfully. He said, I'll remember Senior's kindness in teaching me the sword. I'll never forget this kindness. Mu Chang'e looked outside the sword pagoda and said, You've already comprehended the 11th sword, which shows that your comprehension is far beyond ordinary people. However, the 12th sword is completely different from the 11th sword. You don't care about qi. Only by completely integrating the first 11 moves can you understand this move. I can only help you with this. The rest is up to you. After saying that, Mu Chang'e didn't stay any longer and walked out of the sword pagoda. In front of the hall, Ning Chen looked at Mu Chang'e's back and sighed. After a moment, he looked at the person beside him and said, Your Highness, let's go back. Lin Yuzhen nodded and walked towards the small courtyard in the distance. In the sword pagoda, Jing Wuxia walked over in a white dress. At the center of the pagoda, waves of fire were surging. On the sword-casting platform, which was built with the power of the earth fire, the terrifying temperature caused waves of heat to rise. No one dared to approach it. Jing Wuxia walked forward and waved her hand. Two broken divine weapons flew up and slowly sank into the flames. Third sister, you seem to be very concerned about this child. At this moment, Mei Wuhan walked over in a dark red dress. She looked at the woman in front of the sword-casting platform. Jing Wuxia came back to her senses and was shocked. She restrained her thoughts and shook her head. Big sister, you must be joking. After the ancient battlefield, young Master Ning's name has already spread throughout the world. I've also heard of him, so I'm just a little curious. Is that so? Mei Wuhan smiled and said, It seems that Big Sister is overthinking. Originally, Big Sister wanted to matchmake you and young Master Ning. This person was able to become the champion of the Sword Pagoda's Infinite Sword Banquet. He's barely worthy of our Sword Pagoda's most beautiful third pavilion master. Jing Wuxia's body trembled and she immediately shook her head. Big sister, little sister's heart only belongs to the Sword Pagoda. I have no other thoughts. Big sister, don't overthink it. Mei Wuhan nodded and smiled. Since you've already made up your mind, Big sister won't force you. Focus on the sword. This young Master Ning's cultivation in the sword is astonishing, and he has comprehended the sword codex. If he can be used by the sword pagoda, he will be a great help. Okay. Jing Wuxia softly replied. In the next moment, Mei Wuhan's figure faded and she disappeared from the sword pagoda in an instant. Jing Wuxia secretly let out a sigh of relief. She looked back at the two divine weapons floating in the flames with a complicated expression. She didn't expect that young Master Ning would really become the champion of the sword pagoda. However, it was hard to tell whether this was a blessing or a curse. On the sword-casting platform, waves of flames surged. The life-knowing sword and astral soul floated in the flames. Outside the sword pagoda, the sun set in the west and the bright moon rose. In a small courtyard in the distance, Ning Chen was quietly pondering. Beside him, the small gourd rode on the small green gourd and circled around the courtyard happily. In the room, Lin Yuzhen closed her eyes and healed her injuries. The phoenix cry was placed in front of her and a red aura lingered around her. Little gourd. Ning Chen sensed the situation in the room and called out. Immortal Elder. Hearing the call, the small gourd flew over and whispered. Go and help the lady in the room, instructed Ning Chen. Yes. The small gourd responded softly and flew into the room in front of him. Do you still have the mind to care about others? Demonic chi surged and the demon body appeared. He coldly said, your injuries aren't any better than King Chi's. This sword pagoda is full of mysteries. With your intelligence, you should have noticed it, right? If the enemy doesn't move, I won't move. Ning Chen looked at the cold moon in the sky and calmly said, the small gourd's ability is limited. It can't heal both me and King Chi at the same time. I have the phoenix origin protecting me, so I'm fine for now. It's more urgent to let King Chi recover his strength. Chapter 851. In the sword pavilion, the cold moon moved to the west. The night gradually passed, and when the eastern horizon was about to brighten, the little gourd flew out of the room. It looked exhausted. Immortal Elder, said the little gourd. Rest, said Ning Chen. Okay. The little gourd nodded and flew to Ning Chen's shoulder. It hugged a strand of hair and fell asleep. Ning Chen waved his hand, and the yellow springs restriction covered the little gourd. At this time, the door was pushed open and Lin Yuzhen walked out. His hair was tied up high, and he looked handsome and valiant. Thank you, Brother Ning, said Lin Yuzhen with a smile. Your Highness is too polite. Let's go to the sword pagoda, said Ning Chen. Okay. Lin Yuzhen nodded and left with him. In the northwest of the sword pavilion, there was a majestic pagoda. When people walked in front of it, they felt as small as ants. It made them feel powerless. When the sun rose from the east, the huge stone door under the sword pagoda opened. The interior of the sword pagoda was revealed to the world. A powerful sword pressure swept out, raising a cloud of dust. Outside the sword pagoda, the swordsmen from various regions had strange expressions on their faces. They sighed in their hearts. How many divine weapons were there in the sword pagoda to have such powerful sword pressure? It was said that sword pavilion also had a divine weapon in the sword pagoda. They wondered if they would be lucky enough to see it today. Everyone entered the pagoda. Luminous pearls illuminated the entire space of the sword pagoda. There were hundreds of divine weapons on the pagoda. It was a dazzling sight. The treasures of the sword pavilion that had existed for tens of thousands of years were all here. Now that they were in front of everyone, the sovereigns were deeply shocked. Everyone, you can choose any of these divine weapons you want. There's no need to be polite. As she spoke, Mei Wuhan walked over with a smile on her graceful and beautiful face. Everyone nodded and thanked him. Soon after, they separated to look for the divine weapons they wanted. Your Highness, don't you want to choose one? Asked Mei Wuhan as he looked at the handsome figure in front of him. Thank you for your kindness, Pavilion Master. I already have the Phoenix Cry sword. There's no need for me to choose another weapon. Lin Yuzhen replied with a smile. Mei Wuhan nodded and didn't try to persuade him any further. He looked at the red-robed young man beside the former and said, "Young Master Ning, your sword isn't here. Come with me." Ning Chen nodded and followed him. Lin Yuzhen turned around and followed him. She looked at the sword pavilion master in front of her with a serious look in her eyes. The third pavilion master had warned them to be careful. At first, she thought it was because of the second pavilion master. Said Wuyue Shui. Mei Wuhan's eyes turned cold. Rules are dead, but people are alive. Young Master Ning is my sword pavilion's honored guest. How can you treat him the same? In front of the sword casting platform, Jing Wuxia watched the two of them quarrel with a trace of anxiety in his eyes. He glanced at the red-robed young man and immediately recovered. Young Master Ning, my second sister has always been like this. Please don't take offense. Ning Chen shook his head. After pondering for a moment, he raised his hand and pulled out his life-bound sword from the ground. Second pavilion master's words are reasonable. Rules are rules. How can they be changed because of me? I will think of another way to repair this sword. I just need your sword pavilion to help me repair my astral soul. Wuyue Shui's eyes flashed with an undetectable light, but she didn't say anything. Mei Wuhan frowned. Young Master Ning, you don't need to mind what second sister said. It's just another sword. It's not difficult for my sword pavilion to repair it. Ning Chen smiled and replied, "Thank you for your kind intentions, pavilion master, but there's really no need for it. No matter how much you repair the quality of this sword, it's useless. As long as sword pavilion can help me repair the Star Soul sword, I will be extremely grateful." Seeing that Ning Chen had made up his mind, Mei Wuhan suppressed the displeasure in her heart. She nodded. Since that's the case, we'll do as you wish. Wuxia, how long will it take to repair this astral soul sword? 3 days. Jing Wuxia replied. Mei Wuhan nodded. She looked at the man beside her and said, "Young Master Ning, come here in 3 days to get the sword." Many thanks. Ning Chen politely bowed. Pavilion masters, since Prince Qi and I have nothing to do here, we'll be leaving first. We'll definitely come here in 3 days to get the sword. Please take care. Mei Wuhan smiled. Ning Chen glanced at the nearby Shui Wuyue. He didn't stay any longer and turned to leave. Lin Yuzhen followed behind. Her eyes were full of seriousness. Something was not right. After the two of them left, the 7th floor's stone door closed with a rumble, concealing all the ugliness within. In front of the sword forging table, the smile on Mei Wuhan's face gradually disappeared. It was replaced with boundless coldness and gloominess. Pow! She took a step forward and raised her hand, ruthlessly slapping the person in front of her. Blood immediately flowed out, dyeing her purple robes red. Shui Wuyue, I think you've forgotten your status, said Mei Wuhan coldly. Second sister. To the side, Jing Wuxia was startled. She hastily went up to support her. She anxiously said, "Big sister, second sister didn't do it on purpose. Please forgive her this time. Little sister, move aside." Shui Wuyue gently pushed aside the person beside her. She looked at Mei Wuhan with an indifferent expression. Big sister, what did second sister do wrong to make you so unhappy? I gave you the mission of retrieving the Phoenix Cry sword. How are you doing? Could it be that you can't even handle Lin Yuzhen? Asked Mei Wuhan. Big sister is wise. Shui Wuyue indifferently replied, King Qi's strength is something everyone knows. Although second sister doesn't fear him, defeating him and retrieving the Phoenix Cry sword is not an easy matter. Furthermore, Mo Gate's 9th disciple is always by his side. It's very difficult for me to find an opportunity. Is that so? Mei Wuhan's expression became even colder. don't think that I don't know what happened in the sword domain. Furthermore, you faked being injured in yesterday's battle with Mo Gate's 9th disciple. I'm sure you know your goal. Shui Wuyue, I don't care if your injuries are real or fake. Within 3 days, you must retrieve the Phoenix Cry sword. Otherwise, don't blame me for being ruthless. Big sister. Jing Wuxia anxiously said, second sister's injuries aren't light. How can she retrieve the Phoenix Cry sword from King Qi and Mo Gate's 9th disciple within 3 days? Can you give her a few more days? Give her a few more days? Mei Wuhan snorted, not concealing the slightest killing intent in her eyes. Originally, she had plenty of time, but she gave it up. Shui Wuyue, that's all I have to say. Don't disappoint me again in 3 days. After saying that, Mei Wuhan turned and left. In an instant, he disappeared. Jing Wuxia went up and supported the injured purple-robed woman. Tears lingered in her eyes as she said, second sister, why must you do this? If it's a blessing, it's not a curse. If it's a curse, it can't be avoided. Exhaustion flashed in Shui Wuyue's eyes as she said, that sword cannot be repaired. Only you can repair your own origin sword. Otherwise, if an external force intervenes, you and the sword will both be injured. If you have the chance, go and tell that young Master Ning to nourish the sword with his blood. One day, the origin sword will be restored. It might take a long time, but this is the only way. I will tell him. Second sister, your injuries aren't light. Let me bring you back to rest first. While speaking, Jing Wuxia supported the former and walked out of the door. On the first floor of the sword pagoda, the sword sovereigns from the various regions were still choosing their own divine weapons. At this time, Ning Chen and Lin Yuzhen walked down. They didn't stop and directly walked out of the pagoda. Brother Ning, do you feel something strange? Outside the pagoda, Lin Yuzhen transmitted her voice. Yes. Ning Chen nodded and said, there's something wrong with the second pavilion master. However, there's something even more wrong with the first pavilion master. You may know a person for a long time, but you can't judge his true nature. It seems that we have underestimated the sword pavilion master. Chapter 852. The moon was bright, and the stars were sparse. Within an unremarkable courtyard within Sword Pavilion, Ning Chen was standing guard with his eyes closed. Not far away, Lin Yuzhen was focused on recovering from her injuries. The little gourd floated beside Prince Qi, using its own power to heal him. Its young face was filled with exhaustion. At this moment, in the small courtyard, the void swirled, and an illusory figure in a white dress appeared. After she walked out, she immediately waved her hand and sealed the surrounding space. Third Pavilion Master. Ning Chen opened his eyes and said slowly when he saw who it was. Sir Ning, there isn't much time left. I have something to tell you. Jing Wuxia quickly said, second sister said that the life symbiotic sword cannot be repaired by external forces. Otherwise, both the sword and you will be damaged. If you want to repair that sword, the only way is to use your bloodline power to nourish it day and night. There will be a day when your life symbiotic sword will be restored to its original state. However, no one knows how long that will take. Ning Chen nodded. Many thanks for telling me this. How are second pavilion master's injuries? Second sister's injuries aren't light. Sir Ning, I can't stay here any longer. I'll be leaving now. If you fight with second sister in the future, please be lenient on account of how she helped you today. Jing Wuxia's figure gradually faded. In the blink of an eye, she had disappeared from this world. After the former left, the sealed space returned to normal. Ning Chen calmly stood in place. His eyes were constantly flashing with light. Things were becoming more and more fishy. It seemed these two pavilion masters were hiding something that no one knew about. The ugliness of the human heart is truly disgusting. Devilish chi surged as the devilish body walked out. If there is good, then there is evil. Humans are like that, and devils are also like that. Ning Chen calmly looked at the distant pavilion within the pavilion. At the very least, the third pavilion master repeatedly warned a complete stranger like me. That's already not easy. Benefactor, if the heavens don't bless me, I will do it. Do you have the ability? Sneered the devilish body. Don't forget that we can't even protect ourselves right now. If my main body doesn't wake up, you and I could be in danger at any moment. I will do my best to find a way to step on immortality. I don't want the tragedy of the past to happen again. Not even once, said Ning Chen. I will help you on your path to immortality. However, you can put away that useless kindness of yours. The demonic body said. Then, it disappeared and entered the former's body again. Ning Chen was speechless. He stood in the courtyard and looked at the moon in the sky. Good fortune and misfortune were interdependent. This trip to Sword Pavilion wasn't in vain. He had already obtained what he wanted. Now, it was time to face the calamity. In the room, Lin Yuzhen, who had been recuperating day and night, was gradually stabilizing her aura. With the help of the small gourd, she was finally able to suppress the injuries in her body. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. As the moon set and the sun rose, Lin Yuzhen walked out of her room. Her aura had returned to its peak. Brother Ning, let's go. Lin Yuzhen whispered. Ning Chen nodded. He had only taken a few steps when he stopped again. In front of the small courtyard, a woman in a purple dress appeared. Her beautiful face was ice cold, and the ancient sword in her hand was still sheathed, but her killing intent was obvious. Second Pavilion Master, Lin Yuzhen said with narrowed eyes. Leave behind the Phoenix Cry sword, and I will let you pass, Wu Yue Shui said coldly. Sorry, I can't do it. Lin Yuzhen responded and took 2 steps forward. She stood in front of him and said, Brother Ning, you go first. Leave this place to this king. Your Highness, be careful. Ning Chen continued walking forward. But when he passed by her, he paused and whispered, Second Pavilion Master, you should be careful too. Wu Yue Shui was silent. He didn't reply. Ning Chen also didn't say anything else. He took a step forward and his figure flickered as he rushed towards the sword pagoda. Wu Yue Shui didn't stop him. Once he left, he raised his right hand and unsheathed the sunset sword. A divine sun soared into the sky, illuminating the night. Without saying a word, the battle began. The sunset sword tore through the sky and shot towards Ning Chen. Lin Yuzhen's expression became serious. She waved her hand and a sword appeared. The cry of a phoenix shook the world as she met the attack. With a loud bang, the 2 swords collided. Boundless energy surged and the small courtyard behind them collapsed. There is a sorrowful sound in the sword. Lin Yuzhen's eyes flashed when she heard the sound in the sword. Her sword became heavier and heavier. Wind and lightning surged around her sword. In Moon Heavenly Sunday, after exchanging several moves, Wu Yue Shui condensed his essence and purple flames rose around him. The sword technique appeared once again. Drops of blood dyed his clothes red. His old injury was causing him to suffer a backlash. Phoenix dancing 9 heavens. The world sank. Lin Yuzhen also used the technique. Her body flashed, and her sword danced like a phoenix. It was stunning. The 2 swords collided again and again. Blood dripped from the corner of Wu Yue Shui's mouth. His injuries were becoming more and more serious. You are injured. You are not my opponent. Second Pavilion Master, what difficulties do you have? Lin Yuzhen waved her sword and pushed away the person in front of her. Wu Yue Shui didn't reply. His expression was still cold. He took a step forward, and the ground beneath him cracked. He rushed forward again. The aura of the sword was difficult to hide. The sunset sword could feel the sorrow in its master's heart. The sword also cried out with sorrow. The two swords collided, and dust filled the sky. Neither of them showed mercy. They might have been helpless, or they might have had difficulties. However, their standpoints were different. How could they show mercy? Ugh! After 100 moves, there was a muffled groan. Wu Yue was forced back. Blood flowed from his left shoulder and dripped onto the ground. With a heavily injured body, it was difficult for him to display his strength. After 100 moves, Wu Yue's old injury completely broke out. His true essence surged chaotically, causing him to suffer a backlash. The sword stabbed into the ground. Blood dyed the sand. Wu Yue staggered and vomited blood. Lin Yuzhen waved her hand to disperse the dust. Looking at the heavily injured woman, she walked forward step by step. The sword in her hand didn't stop because of victory or defeat. Again. Wu Yue said tiredly. He barely propped himself up. His sword was trembling. He had clearly reached his limit. I don't have the qualifications to say that I will spare you once. The former hadn't admitted defeat. Holding back was disrespectful. Lin Yuzhen's figure flashed, and her sword pierced through the air. When the sword arrived, relief flashed in Wu Yue's eyes. He didn't dodge, but used his body to welcome the phoenix cry divine sword. Chi La. The sound of the sword cutting through the body was ear-piercing. Blood flowed out, dyeing the divine sword red. Wu Yue's eyes narrowed. In front of him, a familiar figure blocked him. The sword pierced through her body. Blood spurted out, blurring his vision. Little sister. He couldn't believe it. Wu Yue's body trembled. He stepped forward to support the woman in front of him. He reached out to cover the former's bleeding chest. Cough, cough. The sword pierced through her body, injuring her internal organs. Jing Wuxia coughed violently. Blood flowed out of her mouth. Second sister. Jing Wuxia called out weakly. Soon after, she coughed violently again. The veil on her face burned red. It was abnormally glaring. How could you be so foolish? Tears dripped from Wu Yue's eyes. The coldness on his face was no longer visible. It was replaced by pain and regret. What was the point of his life's perseverance now? Second sister. Jing Wuxia slowly raised her right hand. It was covered in blood and filled with reluctance. The next moment, her delicate hand fell silently. A lifetime of sorrow and regret ended. Hugging the former's warm body, Wu Yue's body trembled violently. Tears flowed silently from his eyes, gradually turning into a dazzling red. Little sister, bear with it for a while longer. Second sister will bring you away from here very soon. Wu Yue carefully carried the woman in his arms and walked step by step towards the pavilion within the pavilion. Behind them, Lin Yuzhen looked at the departing backs of the two. Her eyes dimmed as she sighed heavily in her heart. On the 7th level of the sword pagoda, a red-robed young man walked over. His astral souls floated up and down on the sword forging platform. The sword's aura was even stronger than before. Ning Chen walked forward. Fresh blood dripped from his right hand, quenching the sword with his astral souls. Phoenix blood dyed the sword. In an instant, the 7th level of the sword pagoda glowed with a bright red light. Above the 9 heavens, the heavens and earth seemed to have sensed it. Astral light cascaded down, passing through the sword pagoda and shining on the divine sword. The supreme treasure of heaven and earth, Astral Soul Mother Steel, was formed into a sword tonight, resonating with the stars. A heaven-tier sword. On the highest level of the sword pagoda, Mei Wuhan sensed something and opened his eyes. He looked in the direction of the sword pagoda with a cold expression. He took a step forward, wanting to leave. But at that moment, a purple figure appeared in front of him. She was covered in blood, and her killing intent was overflowing. Wu Yue. Mei Wuhan's eyes turned cold when he saw the newcomer. He said, You really have guts, daring to reveal killing intent to me. Wu Yue was speechless. His figure flashed by. Sunset reflection, sword breaking past. Mei Wuhan's pupils shrank. He waved his right hand and the ice plum divine sword came out of its sheath. With a bang, it blocked the sunset reflection. Great flame world, heavenly flame. Filled with hatred, Wu Yue's attack surpassed the limit. Waves of fire soared from the sunset reflection and coiled around it, turning the entire sword pagoda into a sea of fire. Stupid, Wu Yue, don't you care about Jing Wuxia's life? Mei Wuhan's expression was abnormally cold. The cold intent on his sword erupted, freezing the heavens and earth. Mei Wuhan, I'm here to make you accompany my little sister. Wu Yue's hatred reached the extreme. Tears of blood flowed from his eyes. His cultivation rose to the peak again. Purple flames broke through the ice and rushed out. Mei Wuhan frowned slightly. Jing Wuxia died? What happened? The waves of fire arrived, and the ice plum divine sword split the sky. Mei Wuhan waved his sword to block the attacks. His expression was calm, and his half-step fourth realm cultivation was fully displayed. Sunset reflection and ice plum divine sword, two of Sword Pagoda's peak divine swords, were facing each other today. One was Yang, and the other was Yin. As they clashed, the flames of war slowed the sky. Great flame world, world incineration. World incineration appeared once again. Waves of fire swept across the sky, and a rain of fire fell. The terrifying scene was shocking. It was a familiar move from a sword scripture, but it was an unfamiliar power. Mei Wuhan narrowed his eyes and took a step forward, leaping into the sky. Frost Prison, 10,000 Manifestations Reincarnation. The Sword Pagoda's great pavilion master used his first divine skill. He waved his sword, and frost swept across the heavens and earth, turning into a huge whirlpool that appeared in the void. The two moves clashed, and a loud rumble sounded. Ice and fire devoured each other, and the aftermath surged. A moment later, the stalemate was broken. The frost swallowed the sea of fire, and the entire world was frozen. Chapter 853. In the Sword Pavilion, the cold moon was high up in the sky. In the pavilion under the moon, the sound of battle rumbled. After a while, two figures broke through the air and stood in the void. The purple-robed figure was bleeding profusely from her arms. Frost chi spread, nibbling away at her injured body. Your arms have already been pierced by me. Can you still lift your sword and fight? Said Mei Wuhan coldly. In these years, I've already forgotten what pain is. Mei Wuhan, I left this move especially for you. Let's go to hell together. Great flame world, heavenly sin. With a shout, Wu Yue's blood chi exploded from his body. His black hair shot up and instantly, the sky was filled with blood-red light that pierced through the sky. Heavenly sin appeared, shaking heaven and earth. The entire sword pavilion instantly turned into doomsday. Blood clouds roiled in the sky, and 10,000 bolts of lightning crashed down. The destructive might caused even the stars in the sky to shake. An unprecedented pressure came crashing down. Mei Wuhan looked at the horizon, and a serious look flashed in his eyes. Frost Prison, 9 Hell's evil sword. The ice plum blossom's momentum changed, and an endless amount of frigid chi spread out in all directions. Mei Wuhan roared as 9 swords appeared around him, spiraling around him as they soared into the skies. The destructive lightning and the hellish sword collided with each other, causing an earth-shattering rumble. The evil lightning sword descended upon Yi Futian. Ugh! Mei Wuhan groaned, and the corner of his mouth turned red. He was injured for the first time. On the other side, Wu Yue, who had erupted with her last bit of strength, was dyed red. Her blood chi had been completely burned away, and her flame of life was also about to extinguish. Wu Yue, you deserve to die 10,000 times for your crimes. Wounded all over, Mei Wuhan's killing intent erupted from his body. His graceful and dignified appearance turned sinister at this moment. The frost on his sword grew to the extreme. He took a step forward, his sword aiming for a life. Pavilion Master, where it's possible to let people off, one should spare them. As the sound of his voice faded, a red-robed silhouette stepped out from the void. With a wave of her astral soul, she blocked the life-reaping sword attack. Their eyes met. One was calm, and the other was cold. Their swords collided, and cold stars scattered. Young Master Ning, this woman has always made things difficult for you and King Qi. Why are you still protecting her? Mei Wuhan's expression returned to normal when he saw the person in front of him. Ning Qin smiled and said, after all, it's a human life. Moreover, the second Pavilion Master's lifespan is nearing its end. He has already received the punishment he deserved. Why should the first Pavilion Master be labeled as ruthless because of a person who's about to die? Mei Wuhan thought for a moment, then nodded and smiled. Sir Ning, as you said, I was in too much of a hurry to clean up the house. That was why I lost my composure just now. I hope Sir Ning can forgive me. First Pavilion Master, you're too polite. I haven't had the chance to thank Sword Pavilion yet, smiled Ning Chen. It's nothing. Mei Wuhan smiled. What plans does young Master Ning have? Why don't you stay in Sword Pavilion for a few more days so that I can play the role of host? Ning Chen glanced at the woman beside him who was like a lamp that had run out of oil. He smiled gently and said, since the first Pavilion Master is so kind, it would be impolite for me to refuse. Sorry for the trouble. You're too polite, Mei Wuhan replied. As they spoke, the two of them slowly descended and returned to the ground. This way, please. Mei Wuhan extended his hand. Ning Chen nodded and supported the heavily injured Wu Yue as they walked forward. The moment they passed each other, Mei Wuhan's lips curled and he waved his ice plum divine sword. His sword tore through the void, and his red clothes scattered and disappeared without a trace. An afterimage? Mei Wuhan narrowed his eyes and looked to the other side. He coldly asked, when did you discover it? How could I not be careful when walking together with an expert like the first Pavilion Master? 30 meters away, Ning Chen indifferently said, Your Highness, bring the second Pavilion Master to a safe place. I'll deal with this person. As soon as he said that, a handsome figure appeared behind them. After several steps, he entered the battlefield. Be careful. I'll be back soon. Lin Yuzhen took the woman that Ning Chen was supporting and warned him. Don't worry. Ning Chen nodded. Lin Yuzhen didn't delay any longer. Her figure flashed and she quickly flew into the distance. Young Master Ning, you want to stop me by yourself? Your naivety makes me laugh. While speaking, Mei Wuhan's cold aura surged. Snowflakes fell from the sky, and the temperature of the world instantly became as cold as winter. Sword art, prairie fire. Ning Chen waved his sword, and phoenix flames rose. Endless flames spread out, resisting the cold aura. The two powers collided. An instant later, Ning Chen took a step forward, and two immortal swords flew out. Immortal trapping and immortal execution appeared in his hands. Sword art, heavenly sword. A sword pierced through the sky, and the world changed color. Blood-colored sword light lingered, and a terrifying power split the void as it slashed down. Not bad. Mei Wuhan's eyes were extremely cold as he looked at the sword slashing down from the void. He waved his ice plum divine sword to block it. With a bang, the blood-colored sword light shattered, and the aftermath whistled, stirring up waves of sand. 10th sword, immortal execution. Within the waves of sand, a shout rang out, and the 10th sword appeared. Immortal execution's sword light soared into the sky, and a baleful aura surged. Mei Wuhan's eyes narrowed, and he retreated 30 meters. Then, his divine sword condensed frost and blocked the immortal sword. The two powers collided, and a rumbling sound rang out. In the wind and snow, a red-clothed figure flashed past, and her black hair turned red, fluttering in the wind. In the blink of an eye, 100 moves had been exchanged. The two powers on the sword stood side by side. The cold stars on the sword were dazzling, and with extreme speed, it was innately invincible. With one sword blocking the immortal sword, the incomparably sharp sword Qi attacked. Mei Wuhan leaned to the side, avoiding the sword Qi. Then, he condensed energy in his left palm, shaking the battle. Is this the power of an immortal sword? As expected, you didn't disappoint me. Mei Wuhan coldly said, and the sword turned. The ice plum divine sword trembled, and white light appeared again. Frost prison, end of 9 wheels. The ice plum divine sword moved, and the world changed color. Endless dark white frost spread out, freezing the world and creating hell. Hell appeared in the mortal world, and the sky and earth surged. Terrifying waves of frost swept out, and the scene of the end of the world shook people's hearts. Book of Sun, Rising Sun, shouted Ning Chen in hell. He took a step forward and jumped into the air. A boundless fire energy rose up in the air like the sun rising from the east. Sword art, Dragon Sparrow transformation. After one move, another move came out. Ning Chen's left hand waved, and with the help of the sword, the azure dragon and the vermilion bird flew out and merged into the divine sun. The two moves merged, and the starry sky shook. On the ground, the immortal trap trembled, and the red light rose, and the power merged into the void. In an instant, the wind and clouds on the star soul sword changed. The power of the immortal sword merged with the power of the heavenly book, and a shocking sword pressure swept out. The blood-red sword sun illuminated the world, frightening gods and ghosts. In the confrontation of extreme yin and yang, where the sword sun passed, the frost prison collapsed inch by inch. With the support of the two immortal swords, the power was shocking, and everything in hell was destroyed. A pool of blood splashed out, and Mei Wuhan retreated half a step. A sword light slashed across his left shoulder, and blood flowed out, dyeing his clothes red. In a battle of martial arts, there was a clear distinction between the superior and the inferior. The heavenly book suppressed the sword cannon, and injured the sword pavilion master. Mei Wuhan stabilized himself and waved his hand to seal the sword wound on his left shoulder. He looked at the young man in front of him, and his killing intent became even more bone-piercing. The 9th son of Mo Gate lived up to his name. With these two immortal swords, no true realm expert could do anything to him. However, she had long since surpassed that realm. Young Master Ning, your beauty has made me even more determined to destroy you. The test is over. Next, I'll send you to the west. Mei Wuhan's ice plum divine sword broke through the void, and frost surged on the sword, spreading endlessly, turning the entire horizon into a cloud of frost. In an instant, a snowstorm descended, and the surrounding void froze inch by inch. Demonic body. Sensing the change in Mei Wuhan's aura, Ning Chen didn't hesitate. Demonic qi surged around him, and his demonic body appeared. Frost prison, divine court. Mei Wuhan raised his hand, and a snowy aura surged out of his body, surpassing the peak. A half-step true realm move appeared for the first time, and the power of the mortal world rose endlessly. Suddenly, the heaven and earth lit up, and the undercurrent surged to the extreme. Wherever the extreme power passed, everything was frozen. 6 ultimates of the sky demon, demonic flames burning the plains. The demonic body moved, and a crimson sword rang out. Demonic waves surged, and the power to burn the sky and boil the sea shook the gods of the 9 heavens. 9 suns burning the heavens. The demonic technique was used, and the phoenix body moved with the sword. 9 suns soared into the sky, illuminating the dark night. The phoenix and the demon combined, and the demonic suns fell from the sky. Black flames burned the world, breaking through layer after layer of snow, rushing forward. Ha! With a shout, Mei Wuhan stepped into the air, and an ice plum fell from the clouds, entering his hand. With a slash of his sword, the sword split open the void, and the snowy waves surged. Within the snowy waves, a divine court made of ice appeared. It was like a celestial palace had descended, suppressing the world. The demonic suns shook the divine court, and the world's supreme power collided. A world-shaking terror erupted, and the undercurrent was vast and mighty. Within the space of Sword Pavilion, layers of laws collapsed. The immortal inheritance suffered a calamity tonight. 10,000 demons roaring the heavens. Before the shockwaves dissipated, the demonic voice rang out once more. Within the surging demonic waves, one demonic figure after another appeared. There were thousands, tens of thousands of them. Ninth sword, divine domain. The phoenix body moved again, and a sword was swept out. It gathered the power of the immortal sword, and once again opened the sword domain. In an instant, in the sword domain without beginning or end, the world disintegrated for no reason. Piece after piece of land collapsed, and dust and sand surged like waves, covering the cold moon. Boom! With the support of the divine domain, thousands of demons roared. In front of Mei Wuhan, the divine court finally collapsed. An undetectable groan sounded, and a demonic figure passed through his body. Mei Wuhan took 2 steps back, and his hair fell down, dyed red. Strong, so strong that there was no doubt. After experiencing life and death again, he had walked step by step to reach the knowing destiny state. He was no longer the immature youth of the past. In terms of wisdom, he was unparalleled in the world, and in terms of martial arts, he could not be bullied. 2 figures stood in the void. The demon wore black clothes and had black hair, and his eyes were as deep as the abyss. The phoenix wore red clothes and had red hair, and her expression was calm. The combination of martial arts and wisdom was unparalleled today, showing disdain for the world. On the opposite side, blood dripped from the corner of Mei Wuhan's mouth. He was no longer as graceful as before. So, this is your true strength. Mei Wuhan said softly, and looked back. In an instant, he stepped into the air and rushed to the top of the sword pavilion. Seeing this, Ning Chen frowned slightly. Lord Ning, have you seen the real end of the world? At the top of Sword Pavilion, Mei Wuhan let out a deep roar. The ice plum blossom turned upside down and pierced straight down. In an instant, a terrifying scene occurred. The entire Sword Pavilion shook violently. One after another, the great halls disintegrated, and the space of Sword Pavilion collapsed. In the end of the world, above the pavilion, a peerless divine weapon slowly rose. It was simple and heavy, and an unprecedented pressure spread out. The world could not bear it, and it quickly fell apart. After 10,000 years, the #1 divine sword of the Sword Pavilion, the celestial weapon Sun and Moon Ballista, returned to the world. Chapter 854. A cold moon shone in the sky of Sword Pavilion. Under the moon, Sword Pavilion's divine artifact, the Sun-Moon Stallion, was born. Strange phenomena descended from the heavens and clouds surged. As soon as the divine artifact was born, a boundless sword pressure swept out, causing the heavens and earth to tremble. The Sun-Moon Stallion appeared in the sky after 10,000 years of accumulation. It was a divine artifact that surpassed comprehension. It made people feel the insignificance of human strength. 1,000 feet away, 2 figures stood in the sky and looked at the divine artifact. Their faces turned serious. Frost prison, frost descends. An instant later, Mei Wuhan's silhouette flickered as he slashed out with the power of the sun and moon slash. His sword slashed through the sky, and the entire space of the Sword Pavilion was slashed apart. Seeing this, the phoenix body moved in an instant, bringing the demon body with it to avoid the shocking sword light. The sword light fell, causing the mountains to shake and the earth to crack. A huge sword mark appeared on the ground below. It was tens of thousands of feet long and bottomless. A few hundred feet away, the demon body stabilized himself and looked at Sword Pavilion. His expression changed again. "Greetings, Pavilion Master." At this moment, 4 figures appeared around Sword Pavilion. After the divine artifact was born, the 4 heavenly protectors of Sword Pavilion appeared. "Kill him," Mei Wuhan said indifferently. "Yes." The 4 heavenly protectors of wind, water, thunder, and fire accepted the order and their figures flashed. 4 peerless experts at the peak of the true realm worked together with their swords, creating no openings in their attacks. Their swords met, and the cold stars intersected. In the midst of the killing situation, the 2 figures constantly moved. Facing the combined attacks of the 4 heavenly protectors, there was no fear in their eyes. After exchanging several moves, the demon body became faster and faster. Red and black light soared into the sky. The yin-yang formation appeared and the taiji formation appeared. The demon body rose and the star soul and crimson drill sword light flashed. The demon body fought the 4 heavenly protectors. Sword style, Crimson Remnant. Demon style, Bloody Path. The demon body passed by and the 2 swords clashed. With a boom, the 4 heavenly protectors were pushed back. Outside the battle, Mei Wuhan stood quietly. The sun-moon stallion floated in front of him and a terrifying sword pressure spread out. He was waiting for an opportunity to attack. Sword style, Nothingness. Under the taiji formation, the star soul sword in the phoenix body's hand spun and pierced the sky. Blood flame sky. The phoenix body moved. The demon cultivator also channeled his demonic chi. The crimson drill sword was suffused with blood-red flames and broke through the sky. Wind, water, thunder, and fire, the 4 heavenly protectors, 4 divine weapons, sword essence, and vast true chi converged to meet the demon phoenix's joint attack head-on. Rumble. The battle shook violently, and the aftermath of the battle surged. Both sides retreated at the same time. Frost Hell, Divine Punishment. Outside the battle, Mei Wuhan, who had been watching the battle, instantly moved. The divine sword in front of him appeared, and the sun and moon appeared in the sky. With a slash of the sword, the sun and moon turned into sword light, and the divine might punished the world. Both of them flew up, the immortal entrapment and immortal slaying techniques flew up to meet the sun and moon sword radiance. A soft groan was heard as both of them took 3 steps back. Blood splattered from their chests as they were injured. The irresistible power of the divine sword was so terrifying that it was shocking. The Grand Pavilion Master of the Sword Garrett, who was supported by the sun and moon orb, was close to the 4th realm. Even someone as strong as the Knowing Destiny State was unable to withstand it. "Young Master Ning, if you admit defeat now and hand over the 2 immortal swords, I can consider sparing your life." Mei Wuhan stepped forward with a smile on his face. Drip. Blood dripped from the void, splashing vermilion dust and sand. Blood kept dripping from the hands holding the swords, dyeing the blades in his hands red. There was no way out. The 4 heavenly guardians, and the Grand Pavilion Master of the Sword Garrett, who was infinitely close to the 4th realm, was the strongest combination in the world. Demon body. The phoenix body spoke, and the demon body understood. Both of them moved instantly to start the battle again. 6 ultimate demons, reincarnation tribulation. With a deep roar, the demon body expanded, and 100 feet tall demon body appeared between heaven and earth. His hands opened and closed, and the reincarnation tribulation appeared. A surging black vortex with bursts of thunder, and a terrifying power erupted, rushing out with a roar. The 4 heavenly guardians of water, fire, wind, and thunder combined to block the attack. With a bang, each of them took a few steps back, and a flaw appeared in the battle. Nirvana. In an instant, the phoenix body leaped into the sky, and the sword chi on the immortal slaying sword crisscrossed. Magnificent and unparalleled sword light soared into the sky one after another, circling and speeding. The only sword at the peak reappeared in the world. The sword light broke through the sky, and Mei Wuhan's eyes turned cold. The sun and moon annihilation turned around, and with a swing of the sword light surrounded the sword. The sun and moon were bright in the sky, and the divine power shook the nirvana. Layers of sword light collapsed under the sun and moon annihilation, and it was difficult to pass through the heavenly barrier. 6 ultimate demons, 1,000 gods burial. The nirvana's power was exhausted, and the royal secret technique came again. The 100 feet tall demon body was surrounded by demonic flames, and the fist that shook the sky fell straight down. Mei Wuhan snorted coldly, and the divine sword swept across the sky, blocking the fierce attack again. With a loud bang, the void between the two was shattered, and the shocking aftermath collapsed, destroying everything in the world. In an instant, the power of the 4 heavenly guardians was fully displayed. Their figures flashed past, and the 4 swords moved horizontally, and once again pressed forward. Space shattering. The phoenix body flashed past, and the immortal slaying sword and the star soul sword moved side by side, cutting open the void in front of them. Sky water light wave. Among the 4 heavenly guardians of water, fire, wind, and thunder, the only woman waved her sword, and water light filled the sky, stabilizing the constantly collapsing space. The other 3 heavenly guardians rushed forward, and slashed their swords, cold light shining. Sword art, 3 lights shining together. The sword intent turned into shadows, and 3 sword lights broke through the sky, facing the 3 heavenly guardians. 3 swords against 3 heavenly guardians, and with a loud bang, the 3 swords broke through the sword lights, and arrived in front of Hong Yi. The swords cut through her clothes, and blood splattered out. With the danger looming over her, the phoenix quickly reappeared, and avoided the fatal attack. 10 feet away, Hong Yi stopped, and her eyes looked at the 4 heavenly guardians in front of her, and her expression became more and more serious. 4 peak true realm experts were incredible figures in any sect, and Sword Garrett had sent out 4 of them at once, and each of them had amazing attainments in the sword. They could be said to be at the top of the world. This battle would be difficult to end peacefully. On the other side of the battlefield, the demon body was facing the first pavilion master of Sword Garrett, who had a divine weapon in hand. The demon body's 100 feet tall demon body surged with demonic waves, and its fists were powerful enough to split the sky. On the other hand, Mei Wuhan had a divine weapon, the sun and moon annihilation, and his cultivation was unprecedentedly terrifying. In the sky, the sun and moon were in the sky, and with the support of the demon body, he didn't panic at all. Frost prison, moon sky. Divine weapon demon shaker style. Mei Wuhan stepped forward, and the bright moon appeared in the sky. His sword reflected the moon, and his sword opened the 9 heavens. Indestructible protection. The demon body condensed its origin energy, and demon chi gathered around its body, blocking the divine weapon's might. Boom! The skin on the demon body's right arm cracked inch by inch, and the indestructible protection was injured for the first time. The heavenly demon body is indeed extraordinary. Young Master Ning, how many more secrets do you have? Mei Wuhan looked at the 300-meter-tall heavenly demon in front of him, and his eyes flickered. The secrets of Mo Gate's 9th disciple were each more shocking than the last. The Phoenix bloodline, the heavenly demon body, and 2 immortal swords. It was no wonder that so many people wanted to kill him, but none succeeded. Heavenly demon 6 arts, stars transformation. The demon body was injured, and the demon body was covered in blood. However, the blood that flowed out stimulated the demon body's madness. He raised his hand, and demon lightning appeared, and stars appeared in the world. 9 incomparably huge stars descended, and lightning crisscrossed, falling into the mortal world. Frost prison, sunrise. Seeing the demon body's power, Mei Wuhan's expression turned serious. He gathered his origin energy, and divine light illuminated the world. In the sky, the divine light of the sun shone brightly, condensing into sword scars that slashed towards the 9 huge stars. Rumbling sounds rang out, and the huge stars collapsed one after another. Demon fire fell from the sky, turning the entire sword pavilion into doomsday. In the rain of fire, Mei Wuhan's body constantly moved, avoiding the falling demon fire. Heavenly Demon 6 Arts, The demon body rose, and demon chi surged. Suddenly, the demon body's aura stagnated, and the demon body's secret technique was interrupted. Above the 9 heavens, the wind and clouds surged, and an ancient giant dragon gate appeared. It was boundless and heavy, as if the sky was falling. The dragon gate appeared to suppress the knowing destiny double bodies. The martial arts had surpassed the limits. On the other side of the battlefield, the moment the dragon gate appeared, the phoenix body sensed it, and the demon body's aura stagnated. His sword was blocked, and his body was dyed red. The 9 heavens changed, and the most terrifying dragon gate tribulation appeared, causing the demon body's already disadvantaged situation to become even more dangerous. 11. Facing the tribulation, the phoenix body's expression became serious, and the demon body used the 11th sword, and thousands of sword lights gushed out. It was a perfect move that exhausted the limits of the world's sword, and broke into the 9 heavens. The sword current shook the dragon gate, and the world shook. The moment the 11th sword blocked the dragon gate, a sword light flashed behind him, bringing with it a dazzling waterfall of blood. With a muffled groan, the phoenix body's feet staggered, and he waved his left hand, forcing the heavenly protectors to retreat. Brave swordsman, your path has come to an end. The 4 heavenly protectors of water, fire, wind, and thunder surrounded the young figure in the battlefield. They didn't look down on him at all. He was the only person in the world who could withstand such a lineup until now. His life is not up to you to decide. At this moment, the sound of a phoenix pierced through the sky, and an incomparably handsome figure swept over. His sword started killing, and he came to the battlefield. When the 4 heavenly protectors saw him, their expressions didn't change much. They weren't unfamiliar with the name Prince Chi, and he indeed had the qualifications to be arrogant. However, this was Sword Pavilion, and once he came, he wouldn't be able to leave easily. As expected, you've returned. Lin Yuzhen, I'm very happy that you've returned. Not far away, Mei Wuhan glanced at the newcomer from the corner of his eye and sneered. Your Highness, you shouldn't have returned. The phoenix body wiped away the blood at the corner of his mouth and stepped in front of Mei Wuhan. I promised Brother Ning that I would definitely return, so I can't go back on my word. Let's kill our way out together, said Lin Yuzhen softly. You want to leave? On the other side of the battlefield, Mei Wuhan coldly snorted and took a step forward. His sword soared into the sky, and his ultimate move appeared for the first time. Frost Prison, Primal Chaos Tribulation. The sun and moon merged, and primal chaos appeared. Dusky chi rapidly spread, covering the 9 heavens and freezing everything. With the support of a divine item, the primal chaos shocked the world. A terrifying power that made people despair sealed Sword Pavilion space. The heavens were suppressed, and the earth was surging. Devil Body. The phoenix body's eyes flashed with a hint of seriousness as he spoke. That's right. The devil body took a step forward, and its 300-meter body returned to its original size. It arrived in front of the phoenix body with a single step, and its devilish chi surged out. The phoenix body and devil body appeared, and the forbidden sword appeared once more. The Taiji diagram rapidly revolved, and yin and yang transformed into energy that crazily absorbed the spiritual chi of heaven and earth. You've all done well. Now, you can rest. When the final move was about to be decided, ice and snow drifted through the air. The phoenix body appeared, and a white-robed figure walked out. His disdainful appearance. Chapter 855. In the space of Sword Pavilion, the Chaos and Dragon Gate tribulations descended. At the moment of crisis, the phoenix appeared, Bai Yi walked out, and knowing destiny reappeared. His long white hair fluttered in the wind, dazzling white. Time was merciless, and 100 years passed in the blink of an eye. Bai Yi's body was stunned for a moment, then he fell silent. His body dissipated and merged into the main body. The three bodies breathed at the same time, and in an instant, a terrifying airflow rushed to the 9 heavens. His white hair danced wildly, like a demon. Immortal slaying. With a soft voice, immortal slaying was in his hand, and a murderous aura surged. The most ferocious weapon of the ancient celestial world reappeared. With the awakening of knowing destiny, its power reached its peak. Scroll of Earth, 1,000 revolutions of Earth. With a calm voice, immortal trapping fell into the ground. In an instant, red sword light broke through the air, thousands of them rushing to the 9 heavens. The Chaos Ice Prison couldn't withstand the shocking power, and it quickly collapsed. Scroll of Earth, Earth destruction and mountain destruction. After one move, another moved. The earth rumbled, and huge stone pillars rushed to the sky. With a boom, they blocked the dragon gate that fell to the human world. Your Highness, please help to hold these 4 people back. Ning Qin said softly. He stepped forward and instantly appeared in front of Sword Pavilion's master. Without saying a word, immortal slaying started the battle. Bang! The immortal sword and the divine weapon collided, and sword light spread everywhere. The 2 strongest swords in the world clashed, and the flames of war were ignited. Sword technique, nothingness. With a slash of the sword light swallowed the sky and destroyed the earth. It was the same move, but the power was completely different. With the support of the immortal power, the 10,000 feet of the void collapsed. Mei Wuhan's eyes narrowed, and he felt the change in the person in front of him. He also pushed the Sun-Moon avatar to the limit, and his sword met the immortal sword head-on. With a loud rumble, the aftermath surged. The divine weapons clashed, and the sun and moon appeared in the sky, pressing down on Bai Yi. 3,000 miles of sword snow. Ning Chen's left hand clenched, and immortal trapping flew up from the ground. The sword turned into a Taoist secret technique, and wind and snow lingered to meet the sun and moon. The wind and snow split the sky, and the sun and moon fell. The 2 figures slid 100 feet and stopped. Young Master Ning, you're different now. Mei Wuhan said softly as he looked at the familiar yet unfamiliar young man before him. Facing an opponent like the Pavilion Master, I dare not hold back. Ning Qin stood in the void and replied calmly. On the other side of the battlefield, Lin Yuzhen was fighting against 4 protectors with 1 sword. Her entire body was covered in lightning. Although they were both at the peak, the difference between them was obvious. King Qi of Beiki was originally a noble in the mortal world. He had reached the true realm for 100 years and reached the pinnacle for 100 years. Boom! Above the 9 heavens, the dragon's gate that had fallen to the mortal realm crushed the stone pillars one by one. The heavy power of rules permeated the air and pressed down once again. It's endless. Ning Chen looked at the sky, and a cold glint flashed in his eyes. His 2 swords changed, and the phoenix fire frost soared into the sky. The Taiji diagram appeared and blocked the falling dragon gate. Pavilion Master, let's go again. Ning Qin spoke. Once again, the immortal entrapment entered the ground as his astral souls manifested. The Milky Way of the 9 heavens shone resplendently as astral light cascaded downwards, augmenting his sword might. Red light flashed, absorbing the earth chi of the sword pavilion to support the Taiji formation, blocking the dragon gate. On the battlefield below, Bai Yi moved, her astral soul fleeting moving with extreme speed. In an instant, sword light shot towards Qin Wentian. Mei Wuhan leaned to the side, avoiding the sword light. The divine weapon in his hand shone brightly, and a sword slashed across the sky, splitting the sky. Boom! The Zhu Xian blocked the sword, and the 2 weapons clashed again. Frost and snow spread. In an instant, the two swords separated, and the astral soul arrived again at extreme speed, like a shadow following the body. One sword was fast and the other was heavy, and the attack and defense alternated. It was simple and unadorned, and the movements were so smooth that it made one's hair stand on end. After learning the sword for 100 years, one had returned to one's original state, and understood the true meaning of the sword. After 100 moves, it was difficult to determine the winner. The two ultimate divine weapons clashed at the peak of the world, affecting the wind and clouds and shaking the stars. The divine weapon Sun Moon Slayer's power was immeasurable, and the celestial sword Zhu Xian was unparalleled in sharpness. One was the #1 divine weapon of the Sword Pavilion, the other was the #1 weapon of the celestial world. The divine weapons of different eras competed under the moon. Mei Wuhan, the strongest in the Sword Pavilion for thousands of years, and the person closest to the fourth realm. With the divine weapon in hand, his strength had reached a new level, and he was infinitely close to the legendary fourth realm. Warriors in the knowing destiny state were warriors who had walked out of hell. They could split into 3 bodies and had gone through countless trials and tribulations. Their combat power was unpredictable. The two peak experts of the world fought under the moonlight. Sword clashed, and cold light shone in all directions. Nirvana. Ning Chen moved his sword, and the celestial sword Qi soared into the sky. Magnificent sword light illuminated the night sky and the cold moon. Frost prison, karmic water. When the sword light arrived, Mei Wuhan activated the divine weapon's power, and waves of water surged, forming layers of barriers in front of him. Nirvana broke through the sky, and the sword might shook the world. Layers of waves scattered, and it was difficult to block the sword might. Mei Wuhan frowned. He waved the Sun Moon Slayer again, and blocked the sword light that was close to him. He had already sensed it, and now he was sure. Mei Wuhan looked at the white-haired young man in front of him, and his eyes became more and more serious. Compared to before, this person's foundation was like a completely different person. Boom! Up in the sky, the Dragon Gate's power became heavier and heavier. Below, the Taiji diagram trembled unceasingly, and gradually reached its limit. When Mei Wuhan saw this, a strange light flashed in his eyes. He took a step forward, and the Sun Moon Slayer shone brightly. He slashed at the Taiji diagram in the sky. Ning Chen coldly snorted. His silhouette flickered, and with a single step, he appeared in the air, using the immortal slaying technique to forcefully break apart the sword Qi of the Sun Moon Slayer. Sir Ning, the feeling of being suppressed by the Dragon Gate doesn't feel good, right? Why don't you let this seat give you a lift? Mei Wuhan softly asked. The smile on his face was so cold that it caused people's hair to stand on end. He had always been smiling, and the mask on his face could no longer be removed. Ning Chen coldly stood in the air, his white hair fluttering in the wind. He wasn't willing to waste any more words with this madman who had lost his mind. The astral souls in his right hand flashed, and in the air, millions of astral light gathered. A boundless sword pressure gushed forth, and the forbidden sword appeared. This move has already been broken by moonless water. Do you dare to use it in front of this seat? Frost prison, frost flow. As the sound of his voice faded, the cold qi around Mei Wuhan intensified. His sword condensed into frost, and numerous streams of sword qi shot out with extreme speed, aiming for the figure in the air. In the blink of an eye, the sword qi closed in on Mei Wuhan. But at this moment, ripples appeared in the space around Mei Wuhan. The flow of time became abnormally slow, and the sword qi was obstructed, unable to get close. Yellow Spring Seal, Time Unseal. Two great divine restrictions appeared, fighting for an instant. Descent of the Six Daos, Myriad Devil Tribulations, Supreme Forbidden Sword. The sword qi converged, exuding an incomparably majestic might. Mei Wuhan took a step forward, and her figure soared into the 9 heavens. Devil Phoenix Heavenly Tribulation. The Devil Phoenix appeared, and the cry of a phoenix shook the heavens. A black phoenix appeared in the horizon, surrounded by devil Qi. With a flap of its wings, a terrifying black sword Qi broke through the air, filled with towering killing intent. Seeing how powerful this move was, Mei Wuhan's expression stiffened. His divine weapon flashed, and the phenomenon of the sun and moon appearing in the sky appeared, protecting him. In the next instant, millions of swords broke through the air, and layers of sword Qi whistled through the air, leaving terrifying sword scars in the horizon. Something's wrong. The black sword Qi flashed past, and below, Mei Wuhan's expression changed. He hurriedly glanced to the other side, only to see the dragon gate, which was supported by the Taiji diagram, trembling violently. After sensing the danger, its law energy rapidly surged. Boom! An instant later, the sword Qi arrived, and the boundless sword Qi collided with the dragon gate. The aftershock was unparalleled, and the space collapsed, swallowing all the light in the surroundings. Chapter 856. In the sky above Jiang'a, the supreme forbidden sword broke the dragon gate. The three of them worked together and the demon phoenix appeared. Mortals couldn't become immortals. This was the law of heaven and earth. No one could change it. For countless years, this law had stopped countless cultivators. Knowing destiny, they didn't believe in heaven's will. They learned martial arts and swordsmanship. They were unrivaled in the world. 100 years was a long and arduous time. Their white hair was engraved with the marks of time. They fought bloody battles and were on the verge of death. Today, heaven didn't have the right to stop knowing destiny from advancing. The black stream of swords collided with the dragon gate. A terrifying collision sound echoed. Raging waves surged, destroying everything in its path. Behind the stream of swords, the demon phoenix spread its wings and in an instant, it collided with the dragon gate again. Crack! Amid the earth-shaking tremors, cracks appeared on the dragon's gate, crisscrossing each other. Although the cracks were small, there were too many to count. The dragon gate was damaged. In the sky above, the wind and clouds swirled. Black lightning descended, blasting towards the white-clothed figure below. Heavens, you can't stop me. Ning Chen raised his head and looked at the sky. He waved his sword and starlight shone, scattering the lightning. With a step, a red light flashed. Ning Chen instantly arrived in front of the dragon gate. Immortal execution gathered the boundless sword energy in the world and broke the sky with a sword. Rumble, another terrifying tremor resounded through the starry sky. On the dragon gate, more and more cracks appeared and became deeper. If you want to pass the tribulation, you have to ask for my permission first. At this moment, the sun and moon were shining brightly behind him. Mei Wuhan rushed over and waved his divine weapon. Ning Chen turned his head. His eyes were calm and indifferent. His astral soul circulated and the life scripture activated his peerless foundation. His sword pierced through the snow and collided with the divine weapon of Jiang'a. Formless sword. After blocking the head of Jiang'a, Ning Chen waved the immortal execution in his left hand again. The sword light quickly gathered and slashed towards the dragon gate. Crack! The sound of breaking resounded again, getting more and more ear-piercing. On the dragon gate, half of the runes were cut open by the sword light. A clear crack also appeared on the dragon gate. Rumble. In the sky above, thunder rumbled and thunder rumbled. The heavens were furious and didn't hesitate to eliminate the heaven-defying person below. First Pavilion Master, do you want to transcend the tribulation together? Ning Chen's expression was calm as he spoke. The star soul sword's demonic chi surged. Stars twirled around it, and demonic lightning surged, meeting the mysterious azure wrath head-on. The demonic technique shook the heavens, and its remaining might roared through the heavens. The two extremes of human power and heavenly might clashed. The two extremes devoured each other, neither giving way. At the side, Mei Wuhan retreated 100 zhang, avoiding several bolts of lightning. His eyes flashed with seriousness. The might of the heavenly tribulation was not something an outsider could touch. Otherwise, no one would be able to bear the consequences. Ning Chen smiled indifferently and ignored him. Immortal Slayer pierced through the air and slashed at the Dragon Gate. The power of the Dragon Gate was beyond imagination. For countless years, no one had been able to break through it. That was why there was the act of leaping through the Dragon Gate. The heavenly Tao did not allow it. Ning Chen could not leap over the Dragon's Gate. He could only break through it with force and forcefully open a path to immortality. The night was long. The white-haired silhouette in front of the Dragon Gate wielded the celestial slaying sword again and again. The horrifying aura of the sword was constantly changing. The unparalleled foundation and the unparalleled heavenly weapon made even the strong Dragon Gate unable to withstand it. Cracks appeared everywhere and reached its limit. Above the 9 heavens, the tribulation clouds were getting lower and lower. The thunderclouds had turned blood-red, and the sky was filled with blood-red lightning bolts. The strongest heavenly tribulation possessed incomparably vast might. Everywhere the blood-red lightning passed, space collapsed and was completely obliterated. The opportunity presented itself. Outside the battle, Mei Wuhan's eyes were filled with murderous intent. His genuine qi was pushed to the limit, and the sun and moon appeared. Yin Moon and Heavenly Sun. The ultimate technique of the Swordplay Codex was combined with the divine weapon of the sun and moon. The moment it was used, the whole heaven and earth shook. The sun and moon turned into swords and swept forward. At the same time, above the Dragon Gate, the endless power of the law flourished, suppressing the person in front. 3 strange changes attacked at the same time. Ning Chen's expression did not change. He took a step forward, and the void shattered. Behind him, 2 illusory forms of Dharma appeared. The shadow of a phoenix and the shadow of a demon appeared, and a horrifying aura spread rapidly. Sword technique, 3 lights shine together. The human, phoenix, and demon all moved at the same time. 3 rays of sword light broke through the night, blocking the attacks from 3 different directions. With a loud rumble, the 3 dazzling lights dispersed the attacks. In the aftermath, a white-haired figure in white clothes appeared in the sky. With Zhu immortal and astral souls in his hands, he looked peerless, showing disdain for the past and present. In the distance, in another battle, Prince Qi was blocking the 4 celestial protectors. His extraordinary martial spirit shone dazzlingly in the night sky. Phoenix Cry sword light flashed. Facing the combined attacks of 4 experts on the same level, he was not at a disadvantage. 4th sister, go help the pavilion master. Lei Tianhu, the leader of the 4 celestial protectors, said when he saw that the battle would not end in a short time. Yes. The only woman among the 4 celestial protectors nodded. She took a step forward, wanting to leave the battle. None of you can leave. Lin Yuzhen snorted coldly. She turned around and her body moved like a dancing phoenix. A strange movement technique appeared in front of the woman in an instant. She waved her sword and forced the woman to retreat. In the distance, knowing destiny had reached a critical moment. Thunder and lightning crisscrossed the sky as if it was the end of the world. Even though they were far away, they could feel the suffocating pressure. Lin Yuzhen stood in front of the 4 celestial protectors with an unprecedentedly determined expression. She would stop the 4 of them at all costs. Prince Qi, you should know the price of offending the sword pavilion better than anyone else. If you step aside now, the pavilion master might be lenient and not implicate the Baiki Empire, Lei Tianhu said coldly. I, Lin Yuzhen, will never be threatened by anyone. The same goes for the sword pavilion. Lin Yuzhen looked at the 4 people in front of her calmly. She held the phoenix cry tightly in her hand. Green lightning kept flashing around her body. Her cultivation was fully unleashed, stunning beyond compare. Stubborn. The 4 celestial protectors' expressions turned cold. They dashed out and started another round of killing. Boom. Thunder and lightning fell. The battle in the distance was like the end of the world. The white-clothed figure stood tall between heaven and earth, unwilling to give in. No one knew how many times the thunder punishment and the dragon gate had endured. The determination in knowing destiny's eyes never wavered. Sword after sword, he silently resisted the cruel fate imposed on him by the heavens. Unknowingly, his white and clean clothes were stained red. His hands holding the sword were hit by the aftershocks again and again. Blood splashed and dyed the blade red. Outside the battle, Mei Wuhan's expression became more and more serious. He looked at the white-clothed young man in front of him. For the first time, an inexplicable panic flashed in his heart. I can't let him succeed. After making up his mind, Mei Wuhan's heart sank. He no longer cared about the thunder punishment in the sky. He stepped forward and slashed at the white-clothed figure in front of the dragon gate. Nirvana. The final moment had arrived. In front of the dragon gate, Ning Chen shouted softly. The sword light around him soared into the sky. The fairy slayer flew up and frost filled the sky. The wind and snow opened the gate of heaven. The whole world turned into a world of ice and snow. Ugh! There was no beginning and no end. Endless swords were unavoidable and unstoppable. Mei Wuhan's chest was slashed by a sword light. Blood splashed out. He was instantly heavily injured. In front of the dragon gate, the fairy slayer sword soared into the sky. It absorbed the heroic sword energy within 1,000 miles and turned into a sword light that was 3,000 feet long. It directly smashed into the dragon gate that was riddled with holes. Boom! With a final loud sound, the dragon's gate in the sky rumbled and trembled, crumbling inch by inch. In front of the collapsed dragon gate, Sui turned and looked at the person in front of her. She calmly said, "From now on, the battle will begin anew." You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.